The warship was sailing on the White Sea, and Sakazuki stood on the deck and asked Marine behind him, "How long is it?" Sakazuki, Vice Admiral, "The recent wind direction is favorable for our sailing. We are going faster than the original plan, and we will arrive at Sky Island Burka in an hour at the latest." The Marine soldier responded quickly. Sakazuki nodded, satisfied with that. Burka is the transit point of this voyage. After arriving at Burka, the rest of the voyage is on the return journey. It is true that there will be several Sky Islands on the way, but it also means that the mission is about to end. Just when Sakazuki was thinking about these things, suddenly, a dazzling thunder flashed in the direction of sailing in the distance, followed by rumbling thunder. Sakazuki looked over, and then said, "After sailing for so long, I haven't encountered any bad weather. I'm about to arrive at Burka. Is there going to be a storm?" Sakazuki, Vice Admiral, "Will there be storms on the White Sea?" Marine asked curiously. Sakazuki hesitated for a moment, and then said, "I don't know, but since there is already a thunderstorm, it might still be possible." "Then do we need to slow down? Should we wait for the rainstorm to pass?" Marine asked again. Sakazuki said with firm eyes, "It's a trivial matter. How can we delay the schedule? Keep sailing." Speaking of which, Sakazuki is the first to be promoted to Vice Admiral among the next 3 admirals. At present, Sakazuki and Paluzolino are the generals, and Kuzan is just a rear admiral. After all, Kuzan joined Marine a little later than the two of them. But it won't be long. When the Ohara incident broke out, Lianzan was already Vice Admiral. The speed of the warship was still very fast, and after a while, Sakazuki saw Burka on the sea level in the distance, but judging from the situation, there was no storm as imagined. It just looked like there was no rain just now. Sakazuki is not very familiar with Sky Island's climate response, so he didn't think much of it, just thought it was normal. At the same time, on the lighthouse at the Burka Pier, the watchman also noticed the arrival of the warship, but he had never seen a warship himself, so he didn't take it seriously. But soon, he discovered that the people here were also from Lanhai. Strange. Why are there so many people from Lanhai these 2 days? The watchman muttered, but he still dutifully knocked on the shells on the table and began to report the situation. On the other side, in the back mountain of Burka, a large number of thunder elements are constantly overflowing in the forest, which looks very dangerous. At this time, Doflamingo and Senor were standing on the trunk of a tall old tree, looking at the empty valley in the distance. Beckman had already eaten the thunder fruit not long ago, and the moment he ate the fruit, it also meant that his physique changed in an instant, and often this kind of change would cause the ability user to lose control. Because there is no experience in controlling this new physique, it will lose control, just like Doflamingo almost sucked Virgo's blood back then. Now, he can perfectly control his bloodthirsty desire. The same is true for Beckman. The manic lightning power continuously erupted from his body. The moment he ate the fruit, there was even a burst of lightning that soared into the sky, which almost did not cause changes in the sky. Now, although there are still a lot of thunder elements scattered around here, in fact, the situation is much better than before. It can be seen with the naked eye that Beckman has gradually mastered this brand new power. He is controlling his body and will no longer release thunder and lightning to the outside world. Raising his hand and looking at the watch on his wrist, Doflamingo said, "It's almost time. Let's start tomorrow, so as not to run into the real owner of Marie Joy's 2 days later. How embarrassing it would be." According to what Kazil said, it seemed that under normal circumstances, Marie Joy's emissary would arrive after 2 days. Now that the goal of coming to Sky Island has been achieved, and even bought a blueprint and model of Arc Proverbs for nothing, why don't you hurry up and run away? "Young master, do you want to build an ark?" Senor asked suddenly. "Well, when I arrive at the capital of 7 waters, I will find a professional shipbuilder and ask, is there anything that can be improved about this ark? After all, it is a technology hundreds of years ago," Doflamingo said. "This world is very strange. The technology hundreds of years ago seems to be particularly developed. Many researches and technologies in Dr. Vegapunk's later period seem to span the ages, but in fact, they are just rebuilding those technologies from the ruins of history. Just resurrected." But Doflamingo has never been superstitious about this kind of respecting the ancients. Maybe there are many advanced technologies in ancient times, but it does not mean that modern technologies are not good enough. He feels that there is no deliberate division of time in technology. The main thing is whether it will be useful or not, and whether it can be used. This is the case with Arc Proverbs. Although it looks very advanced and powerful, there may not be room for improvement. Senor nodded, and didn't say anything more about this question, but said, "If you want to reach the capital of the 7 waters from Sky Island, the shortest distance is to descend directly from here, and you can go directly to the sky above the capital of the 7 waters." At some point, Senor opened a sea chart in his hand, clicked on it, and there was a sky island that he had never been to before, called Sunlight Island. This chart was provided by Gonfor of Angel Island. As the god of Angel Island, the chart in Gonfor's hand is naturally not ordinary, and there is a lot of information on it. Like Burka, there are some introductions, which are the strongest of the 6 surrounding sky islands, and the approximate population. And this, Sunlight Island, in these respects, belongs to the ordinary level, and even in terms of strength, it is not as powerful as Angel Island. After all, Angel Island has fought a 400-year war with the Sandias. Although the population is small, the fighting power should be considered powerful in Sky Island. However, Sunlight Island also has its own unique features, that is, this island is a rare religious sky island. Generally speaking, the ruler of Sky Island is called God, but this kind of God does not contain any religious color, nor does it have the meaning of deification, just like king, emperor. It simply expresses the identity and title of the ruler. But on this Sunlight Island, Buddhism is prevalent, and the ruler is called Buddha. However, it is obvious that Doflamingo is not interested in these religious cultures, not to mention that he is called Lord Buddha, he is called God, and it has nothing to do with Doflamingo. So Doflamingo just glanced at it and said casually, "Then go down from here." As soon as the voice fell, Beckman let out a low growl, and successfully locked all the thunder element power that was constantly overflowing from his body. At this moment, he finally recovered his human form, and he was no longer a human-shaped power bank. Hoo-ha. Beckman breathed out a little tiredly, then looked up at Doflamingo, who was standing on the tree trunk in the distance, and said, "You didn't tell me in advance that after eating devil fruit, you should pay attention to this kind of power runaway awe." "I've never eaten Logia's devil fruit." Doflamingo rolled his eyes and said. Senor asked curiously, "How does it feel?" Beckman. "Feeling." Beckman grinned, and then shook his hand violently. In an instant, a thunder burst out from his hand, smashing a big tree in the distance into sawdust. After pretending for a while, Beckman continued, "It feels great." At the same time as he finished speaking, he took out a cigarette from his pocket and bit it on his mouth. An electric arc flashed and the cigarette was already lit. "Let's go. Go back and say hello to Kazir, and then rest for a night. We will leave tomorrow," Doflamingo arranged. At the same time, at the port of Burka, Sakazuki grabbed the captain of the guard, Nares, by the collar with one hand, lifted him up from the ground, and asked in a gloomy tone, "What did you just say? Mariajoy's a mission today already here?" "That's right. That's right. The Lord God has also received them, and even signed a trade agreement with them," Nares said in a panic. Sakazuki turned to look at the special envoy behind him, and asked, "Marie Joyce, have you sent any other missions?" The special envoy also looked confused, shook his head and said, "No, we are the only ones visiting Sky Island recently." After Sakazuki was sure, he looked at Nares and said in a deep voice, "You idiots, you have been deceived, that is not Mariajoy's mission, we are. Take me to your god, I want to ask if this is a mission. What's going on? Those bastards blaming our name are still on the island, right?" Sakazuki felt that this should be a well-calculated conspiracy. After all, if they hadn't had a good wind direction for their trip, they wouldn't be there until 2 days later. Simply the perfect time difference. It's good now, you're blocked on the island by yourself, right? They have to be burned to ashes with magma. Burka's shrine. At this time Sakazuki is holding a trade agreement in his hand. Sky Island's only designated cooperative trading partner, Bai-Bai's sole agent, determines the exchange rate value of Ike and Bailey, and is the only designated exchange office of Sky Island. Sakazuki looked at these outrageous trade agreements, looked at the shivering Kazir again. "Damn you. Are you too greedy?" Turning the page, Sakazuki is going to take a look. Who the hell is so bold? Dare to pretend to be the special envoy of the world government in Sky Island, and dare to sign such an outrageous agreement with the people of Sky Island here. His eyes quickly swept over some weird agreements and treaties, and finally, Sakazuki's eyes fixed on the lower right corner of the page. Donquixote Doflamingo. When Sakazuki pronounced the name, people were a little confused. For a moment, he wondered, is this still a Matryoshka? Is it true that Doflamingo is here to cause trouble, or is someone using his name? If it's true, the Doflamingo guy, wasn't he developed in North Blue? Why is it here? Thinking of this, Sakazuki looked at Kazir, and asked in a deep voice, "What is their purpose for coming here?" "Evil. Devil fruit. Your Highness Doflamingo." No, this big liar wants to get a devil fruit from us," Kazir said quickly. "Devil fruit." Sakazuki frowned. "Did they get it?" Yes, I got it," Kazir said with a little embarrassment. Sakazuki's eyes sank, and he asked, "What is devil fruit?" "I don't know. They just gave me a picture," Kazel said. handing the picture to Sakazuki from the table. After Sakazuki took the picture, he looked at the devil fruit on it. He didn't know, and he didn't bring the devil fruit illustrated book when he went out this time, which was very embarrassing. However, Sakazuki remained calm on the surface, turned around and handed the picture in his hand to a marine behind him, saying, "Go, ask someone to take a look, do you know anyone?" However, Marine had just received the picture, and before he could take any action, the sound of footsteps came from the corridor not far away. Fur. You don't need to look for it. If you are curious, I will be happy to answer it for you. Sakazuki Vice Admiral. Doflamingo's figure in a black suit gradually walked out of the shadows in the corridor. Come out. After seeing Doflamingo's figure clearly, Sakazuki's face darkened, and he said with a very gloomy expression, "It's really you, Donquixote Doflamingo." After a pause, Sakazuki asked in a deep voice, "What are you doing here?" Doflamingo walked not far from Sakazuki, stopped in his tracks, with an arrogant smile on his lips, shrugged and said, "Didn't you just find out? I came here for a devil fruit. If I know what kind of fruit it is, I don't mind telling you." Sakazuki's eyes were gloomy, but before he could ask, Doflamingo added softly, "The so-called invincible Loja thunder fruit, envy. If the time comes a little earlier, maybe this devil fruit will it falls into the hands of your marines. Fur. Just find a character who is about as good as you want. Well, like that Guillaume lady in your marine, if you eat it, you will be sure to have admiral-level combat power in the future. Well, what a pity." Hearing these words, Sakazuki's pupils ignited with flames, and his aura gradually became vigorous and irritable. His fingers were clenched into fists, but in the cracks of the fists, hot magma dripped faintly. With a sizzle, fell to the ground, burning a hole in the floor. He is very clear that this is Doflamingo provoking him. In fact, even without Doflamingo's appearance, they would not be able to get thunder fruit from here. The reason is very simple, because they do not have this goal, so they will not mention this after coming things. How can we talk about getting fruit? But he knew that Doflamingo was deliberately provoking himself, but with Sakazuki's violent temper and arrogant character, how could he swallow this breath? In particular, Naval Headquarters Intelligence Analysis has already said that Doflamingo's ability mainly relies on blood, and his Sakazuki's magma, to a certain extent, seems to be able to restrain Doflamingo. If he dared to release the sea of AA blood, Sakazuki would have the courage to turn the entire burqa into ashes and burn his sea of AA blood to nothing. Sakazuki's ferocious aura rushed towards his face, and Doflamingo didn't feel any pressure, just like a spring breeze, but Beckman and Senor, standing behind Doflamingo, obviously felt the pressure. Beckman looked at Sakazuki, who was tall, 3 meters tall, strong and burly, and very oppressive, and secretly sighed in his heart. After all, he deserves to be called the Marine New Generation monster. This kind of pressure, obviously, he's strong. Beckman is now a thunder fruit ability user, but he has never developed his ability. As for the basics, there is, but not much, and it will take a certain amount of time. Give him enough time, and he will be able to get explosive power increase. But now, he asked himself, it was indeed no match for Sakazuki. As for Senor, Kakuzu broke into a cold sweat because of this momentum. It would have been even more embarrassing if Doflamingo hadn't stood in front of him. In just a short moment, Sakazuki's aura seemed to condense into substance, visible to the naked eye, and the surrounding air seemed to be dyed with a layer of orange fire. This powerful aura enveloped everything around him. But it was also when this momentum wanted to further press on Doflamingo's body, a change happened. A ferocious spirit not inferior to Sakazuki erupted from Doflamingo's body. For a moment, everyone seemed to feel a scarlet light flashed in their eyes. When they came back to look again, it was not an illusion. The aura that had condensed into substance and even began to affect the surrounding matter, indeed with scarlet blood, pushed Sakazuki's orange flame out. At this moment, there is a clear distinction between Doflamingo and Sakazuki. Both of them are looking directly at each other, constantly using their own aura to test. This kind of imposing confrontation only appeared for 3 or 2 seconds, and it seemed that the space couldn't bear it anymore. With the continuous escalation of this confrontation, cracks in the space appeared faintly around the two of them, and from time to time there were jet-black lightning flashes. Beckman and Senor are okay. When Doflamingo's momentum is released, the two of them cannot feel the pressure. The Marines behind Sakazuki are the same. With Sakazuki in front, they cannot feel the oppression of Doflamingo. Only Kazir, standing between the two, felt as if he was about to suffocate at this moment. His expression was pale, his body was dripping with sweat, and he was trembling endlessly. Finally, when a black bolt of lightning exploded from his side, Kazir rolled his eyes, fell straight to the ground, and fainted. It seemed like a signal. When Kazir fell, a fierce light flashed in Sakazuki's eyes, and the aura on his body suddenly jumped up again, and at the same time, he was irritable and hot, as if the hot breath that wanted to destroy everything came from it exploded on his arm. Wrapped in lava and Haki's punch, he hit Doflamingo without hesitation. It was also at the moment when Sakazuki made his move, a scarlet gleam flashed in Doflamingo's eyes, and then he heard a clang, as if a sharp knife was drawn out of its sheath. Originally hanging on his waist, the low-key and luxurious Zindu was unsheathed in an instant, and a cold light happened to shine on Sakazuki's eye sockets, making Sakazuki squint his eyes instinctively. When the blade collided with Sakazuki's iron fist wrapped in magma, Armament Haki's hedge exploded, and the sundries, desks and other things around the two were blown away, and the unconscious card on the ground Zir was also directly blown away. At this moment, Doflamingo pressed his palm on Sakazuki's fist with one hand, and said with an evil smile on the corner of his mouth, "Sakazuki, do you want to break the tacit understanding between you Marine and me? I'm waiting for Marine. When did I have a tacit understanding with a villain like you?" Sakazuki looked at Doflamingo with gloomy eyes, and said in a deep voice, "Fufurfur, what you say? You really have a bad temper." Doflamingo sneered. "What are you proud of? Crap." Sakazuki looked at Doflamingo's evil smile, and his heart became more angry. The next second, a column of magma shot up into the sky, directly lifted the roof of the temple, and shot straight into the sky. When the temple exploded, the figure of Doflamingo appeared in the air soon. He spread out a huge bat wing like a demon on his back, his eyes were scarlet, and evil flowed backwards. When the wings behind Doflamingo flapped twice and stopped his figure in the air, in the magma, the burly and sturdy Sakazuki faced Doflamingo with a strong impact like a volcanic bomb blasted out. Just hit it. Dark Hound. Sakazuki's palm was burned into magma, and he grabbed Doflamingo's face with one claw. It seemed that he wanted to use this blow to directly blow Doflamingo's head off. The bat wings behind Doflamingo slammed, pulling his figure back, and at the same time, he was also above Sakazuki at this moment. With Haki's power wrapped around his feet, Doflamingo had no intention of retreating from Sakazuki's ferocious blow, just kicked up. At the moment when fists and feet intersect, Zindu in Doflamingo's hand explodes. Face the wind, Hasa. Zindu's blade suddenly cut a gust of wind pressure. The speed of the wind pressure was extremely fast, extremely swift and violent, coupled with the face-to-face opening. Sakazuki didn't react at all. The whole person was under the wind pressure from the waist attack, cut in half from the air on the spot. Sakazuki's upper and lower body fell from the air to the ground and fell into two pools of hot magma. Although he suffered a little loss, it was not a big one. Almost in the blink of an eye, the two pools of magma rolled up, and then Sakazuki's figure emerged from the magma. It's nothing serious, it's just that it doesn't look good on face. When he looked up at Doflamingo in the air, he found that Doflamingo had already disappeared. "What scenery are you looking at? Sakazuki?" Doflamingo's voice came from behind Sakazuki. For a moment, Sakazuki recalled one of Doflamingo's strange abilities in the intelligence, shadow movement. The bastard can get out of someone's shadow. But it was a bit late, the fiery magma on Sakazuki's body hadn't erupted yet. The sharp blade had already broken through his back, pierced his chest, exposing the blood to the air. At this moment, the Marines watching the battle from a distance were all stunned. Because in their sight, all this happened very quickly. In the last second, Sakazuki Vice Admiral fought with Doflamingo in the air and was cut down immediately. The next moment, Sakazuki Vice Admiral reappeared from the ground unscathed, but before they could breathe a sigh of relief, Doflamingo, who was still in the air, almost disappeared into the sky in a strange way. When he came back to his senses, Doflamingo had already pierced Sakazuki Vice Admiral's chest with the long knife in his hand from behind. From the moment the first knife cut Sakazuki in the air, Doflamingo has already learned an important message, that is, Sakazuki's observation haki, which is not very thick. If the move just now was used against Sengoku, Sengoku would probably be able to deal with it in an instant, because his observation haki can detect it and even predict it. But Sakazuki didn't. Doflamingo asked himself, although the cut was abrupt, it wasn't impossible to avoid it. But Kasuki didn't dodge. This proves that either Sakazuki is underestimating him and not paying attention to his Doflamingo, or this guy's observation haki is short-board and failed to realize his offensive. But it doesn't matter, no matter which one it is enough for Doflamingo to make the next judgment. That's sneak attack. In fact, it is not appropriate to say sneak attack. After all, the two sides have already fought each other seriously. To put it another way, it should be switched to assassin mode. Fighting against Sengoku, because he couldn't gain any advantage in terms of skills and experience, so Doflamingo had no choice but to adopt head-to-head tactics, relying on his own strong resilience to fight fiercely with Sengoku. But when facing Sakazuki, there is no need. First of all, Sakazuki has not yet become the top player in the first sequence 20 years later, Marine Admiral. Today's Sakazuki is still in the development stage. He is definitely stronger than the General Vice Admiral, but if you say that he can be stronger than Doflamingo, that is unlikely. After all, his Doflamingo penance for so many years was not given in vain. From the first touch, Doflamingo could feel that Sakazuki wasn't putting much pressure on him. Compared to Sengoku, he is still far behind. In this case, Doflamingo hopes to use Sakazuki as a whetstone to show off his skills. After being pierced by Doflamingo from behind, Sakazuki felt a pain, but although he had not yet reached the peak, Sakazuki at this time was by no means a rookie. The first time, Sakazuki elementalized his whole body. And the moment before he became elemental, the blood in his wound had already started to surge. The ground melted rapidly, and Sakazuki's figure turned into magma liquid, scattered directly on the ground, and merged with the molten pits on the ground. In Doflamingo's observation haki, the existence of Sakazuki is no longer felt. But he also admired Sakazuki's decisiveness. If Sakazuki was a second late just now, Doflamingo would definitely follow his wound and draw out his blood. Logia is really a convenient ability. Doflamingo looked at the lava area on the ground in front of him, raised his brows, and murmured softly. He hadn't fought against Logia's enemies before, and he really didn't know that once the elementalization merged with the surrounding environment, observation haki would not be able to perceive the existence of Logia's ability users. Or to put it another way, it's not that the color of knowledge in knowledge can't be perceived, but that his knowledge color of Doflamingo has not been cultivated properly after all. Of course, it is also possible that Kasky has some special skills. It was too late, but it was so fast. From the time when Sakazuki reacted decisively to when Doflamingo just muttered a word, the surrounding ground suddenly changed. With Doflamingo as the center, the ground range of more than 100 meters suddenly began to heat up and scald. There are wisps of red light emitting from the ground, which is magma. Doflamingo reacted immediately after discovering this situation. The pair of bat wings behind him spread out and flew towards the sky at an extremely fast speed. But the next moment, a huge magma column more than 100 meters wide erupted from the ground and shot straight into the sky. Before Doflamingo jumped out of this range, he was directly swallowed by the magma. Also at this moment, Sakazuki's burly figure emerged from the hot magma beneath the ground. His injury still exists, but he has pasted it with magma and covered it with a layer of armament haki. The wound will no longer bleed blood, and it can also block Doflamingo's ability. As if he didn't care about the injuries on his body, Sakazuki stared fixedly at the magma column erupting in the air, as if he was looking for the figure of Doflamingo. However, at the next moment, the magma column more than 100 meters wide suddenly broke from the air, and the incision was very smooth. Immediately, the swift and fierce wind pressure slashed past, cutting the clouds in the distant sky in half. Look again, in the broken magma, Doflamingo's figure is holding a cold heart, and his hair is unharmed. It is impossible to judge whether this guy has recovered from high-speed AA regeneration, or if he is not injured at all. But no matter how you say it, it's certain that my own blow didn't work. Thinking of this, Sakazuki's face darkened a lot. Originally, he thought that according to the information in his impression, he should be sure of Doflamingo. But what's wrong with this situation now? In the air, Doflamingo flicked Zindu in his hand, and the blade drew a flower shadow. The next second, the scarlet color in Doflamingo's eyes deepened a little, and the pair of bat wings behind him fluttered violently, piercing through the surrounding airflow. Made a booming sound. Extremely fast, from top to bottom, attacked Sakazuki. Sakazuki's eyes seemed to be able to eat people, and he shouted violently, explosive flame-burning skyfire. A large amount of magma suddenly exploded from his body, and the scorching breath quickly filled up. On the ground behind him, there were also several small craters that matched his height. In the next moment, the magma on his body and the crater behind him roared like a continuous firing machine gun, almost like a rain curtain. A large number of magma cannons roared, and the multi-purpose brother Lang Ming covered it directly. Doflamingo in the air only feels that the line of sight is open for 1 second, and the next second is full of magma bombs. But he wasn't afraid. He didn't intend to dodge at all. A gust of wind and airflow surrounded the heart in his hand, and immediately, several phantoms quickly appeared from Doflamingo's arm. In front of him, the knife curtain is airtight. Whenever a magma bomb hits, it can always be cut in two with a sharp blade, and it will slide down. The flickering cold light flew out the nearest magma bomb, and this dense rain-like offensive also briefly paused for a moment. And for Doflamingo, this pause was enough. That condensed on the knife body, the wind pressure air current that is so thick that it cannot be melted away is already ready to go. Drink. Doflamingo yelled violently, and the heart in his hand was chopped out. The rapid wind pressure piled up layer by layer, and in Sakazuki's stunned eyes, it was like a light curtain, blocking countless magma bombs. After that, I saw the magma bombs falling on the wind pressure wall curtain one after another, exploding quickly, but failed to break through and throw them away. What the hell is this shit? Isn't Doflamingo a vampire capable of phantom beasts? This scene. Sakazuki vaguely recalled the scene when Garp's son Drago was still in the marine not long after he joined the marine. At that time, his magma, like now, failed to break through Drago's wind wall. The next moment, Sakazuki snapped back to his senses. He must not be distracted like this in battle. Then, he saw at a glance that Doflamingo, who was originally in the air, had already appeared 5 meters away in front of him, and the distance was still getting closer. Missing your mind in battle is the way to death, Sakazuki, Doflamingo said in a deep voice with a murderous look in his eyes. Also at the same moment, Zindu, who had put away the knife and put it into the sheath at some point, once again burst into a cold light at this moment. Sakazuki's heart trembled, and he instinctively wanted to make countermeasures. But when he moved his arms, he suddenly felt some restraint. Looking at it from the corner of the eye at this moment, the fire seemed to reflect some traces in the air. Line. Sakazuki was a little confused. WTF. But at this time, everything is over. With a clang, Doflamingo has already passed Sakazuki's burly and strong figure, and at the same time, Zindu, with a flash of cold light, is sheathed again. One knife/steel flash, Doflamingo said softly. The moment his voice fell, a lot of blood burst out from Sakazuki's body, and a knife wound stretched from his left shoulder to the right side of his lower abdomen. A few white lines slowly fell on the ground, and their source was the ring on the little finger of Doflamingo's right hand. Against the backdrop of the burqa blazing, the flamingo sailed away from the port of the hapless place. There is no need to worry about burqa being destroyed. After all, the people above have already started to put out the fire, so it should be fine. Maybe? On the deck, Doflamingo was still in the handsome suit, with a cigarette in his mouth, his right hand resting on the hilt of the knife at his waist, and he looked at burqa from a distance. The previous battle between Cervantes and Sengoku made Doflamingo let go of the cowardice in his heart, no longer thinking about hiding it, and showing his strength. If you don't even have the courage to compete with the heroes of the world, what can you say to make Don Quixote great again? Today's battle with Sakazuki allowed Doflamingo to further establish his confidence in his heart. He can't beat Sengoku, yes, at least right now. But the younger generation, the new generation, the top seedlings like Sakazuki, have already lost to themselves. This finally gave Doflamingo confidence. The sea in the first 2 decades was really wonderful, be it Rocks, Garp, or Roger, Shiki, Whitebeard, Sengoku and so on. But to count romantic figures, it depends on the present. In the next 20 years, step by step, I will transcend everything and ascend to the supreme throne, Doflamingo said softly. The heart at the waist seemed to feel the spirit of the master, and trembled slightly. A wisp of smoke drifted out from the corner of Doflamingo's mouth. At this moment, Beckman, who was also biting a cigarette, came to Doflamingo's side and leaned against the fence. The arc flashed, and the cigarette he was biting on the corner of his mouth was lit, and after exhaling a puff of pleasant smoke, Beckman said, "When I first went to sea, there was often an uncle who liked to drink and brag, saying that he had been in Grand Line, has seen the Battle of Jianao. He said that Jianao's battle, from a distance, he thinks he is very handsome." Doflamingo raised his hand to pinch the handle on his lips, took it off, took a breath of smoke, flicked the ash and said, "How is it? I was handsome enough just now." Ah ha 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 ha. Beckman laughed loudly, then nodded seriously. "He's so handsome, that's Sakazuki, although it's the first time I've seen him. His name has often appeared in newspapers in the past woolen clothes." To be honest, Beckman was quite shocked when he saw Doflamingo cut Sakazuki to serious injury. Whether it was knowing that Doflamingo had fought against Marine Admiral Sengoku before, or hearing Doflamingo's bragging about his strength on weekdays, none of them were as shocking as the moment just now. Because, this is what he saw with his own eyes. Sakazuki is not an unknown person. A few years ago, he was called one of the new generation monsters of Marine. In his 20s, he became the elite vice admiral of Marine. There are already rumors. Said Sakazuki could be promoted to Naval Headquarters Admiral Alternate anytime now. In newspapers, in the news, in reality, and at sea, Sakazuki is a rising supernova in Marine. In New World, many great pirates who have been famous for many years were reduced to ashes in the magma of Sakazuki. It can be said that Sakazuki is by no means a simple character. But today, Beckman saw with his own eyes that Doflamingo directly chopped Sakazuki into serious injuries with unstoppable courage. Seriously, if Doflamingo didn't seem to have the intention to kill Sakazuki, Sakazuki should be cold by now. This shock made Beckman's recognition of Doflamingo deepened. In this sea, among the younger generation, maybe he is the leader in Doflamingo. Beckman secretly speculated in his heart. Listening to Beckman's praise, Doflamingo smiled and said, "Whether you are strong or not is a matter of a moment, and whether you are handsome or not is a matter of a lifetime, so I decided to be a great swordsman." After the two chatted nonsense for a while, Baker-chan asked, "Why didn't you kill Sakazuki just now?" "I killed Sakazuki on the front foot, and Marine on the back foot will absolutely desperately sweep away our Donquixote family's field in North Blue." Doflamingo raised his eyebrows. "Sakazuki is no weed vice admiral. Doflamingo kills as he says, no one stands behind him. Sakazuki is a new brand of naval headquarters. In the future, it will even be cultivated in the direction of admiral. Maybe there are doves and hawks fighting among the internal factions, but when it comes to the outside world, Marine will definitely remain consistent. You killed other people's admiral seedlings for no reason. So Marine can let it go with you. What's more?" The corner of Doflamingo's mouth curled up, and he thought to himself, "That guy Sakazuki is ambitious, it's still useful to keep him." Among the Marines, the only person in the new generation who has the courage to initiate changes to the world government is undoubtedly Sakazuki. In Kuzan's words, he is too indecisive, his personality is not strong enough, and he looks forward and backward. It may be possible to be a conservative Marine marshal, but it is impossible to expect him to bring about any changes. Needless to say, Paluzalino, there is an old fried dough stick. This guy is not good at oil and salt, and no one will offend him. Only Sakazuki. This guy has a strong temperament and is very decisive, dare to fight and bet. To a certain extent, Doflamingo will also need such a pawn in the future to ignite the grievances and resentments between Marine and the world government that have been entangled for more than 800 years. Listening to Doflamingo's explanation, Beckman always felt that something was wrong, and asked suspiciously, "Do you have other reasons? It's just North Blue's business, you may value it, but it's definitely not because you don't want to completely tear yourself apart with Marine reason." Doflamingo looked at Burka, who gradually disappeared on the sea level, flicked the soot in his hand, and said softly, "Well, who knows?" At the same time, in the medical room on the warship, Sakazuki, who was covered in bandages and whose wounds were still oozing bloodline, suddenly opened his eyes from the hospital bed. The beast-like aura roared out from his body, but when he saw the surrounding situation clearly, he quickly suppressed the irritable aura in his body. Recalling the previous scene in my mind, Doflamingo cut him into serious injuries, and then he was drawn out a lot of blood, and he passed out due to excessive blood loss. That guy. Sakazuki was very puzzled. That guy. Why didn't he kill him? Sakazuki knew very well that none of the people present at that time could save him from Doflamingo. And now, he didn't die, which proved one thing, Doflamingo didn't mean to kill him. Sakazuki Vice Admiral. A Marine colonel called out in surprise after seeing Sakazuki sitting up. Ghost Spider. Sakazuki glanced at Marine, and then asked, "Where is Don Quixote Doflamingo?" There was a look of shame on Ghost Spider's face. He lowered his head and said, "I'm very sorry, Sakazuki Vice Admiral. The situation was very chaotic at that time, we couldn't stop them from leaving." "Leaving?" Sakazuki murmured softly. He looked at the bandage on his body, and felt the pain from the wound from his shoulder to his lower abdomen. But what hurt more was his self-esteem. As a Marine, he lost to the pirates, which is a shame. He was also spared by the pirates, which made Sakazuki feel even more embarrassed. But he would not have any thoughts of suicide and apology because of this. This shame, this pain. I will write it down, Doflamingo. When we meet next time, I will return this shame, this pain, 100 times and 1,000 times to you. Asshole. Sakazuki swore silently in his heart. After adjusting his mood a little, Sakazuki looked at the Ghost Spider and said, "Bring me the phone bug, contact the headquarters. I want to report this matter. Doflamingo's strength is developing extremely fast, which is completely inconsistent with Sengoku Admiral's original description." Speaking of this, Sakazuki suddenly remembered something, slammed the bed and said, "Damn it, they also got a thunder fruit." Just like what Doflamingo said when he challenged him before. As a beneficiary of Logia's ability, Sakazuki knows better. Once Doflamingo finds a more powerful host for Thunderfruit, as long as that guy fights a bit. In the future, the Donquixote family will definitely be able to emerge a Marine Admiral level figure. According to the information of Naval Headquarters, Donquixote family has a complete set of training mechanism and has absorbed a large number of talented seedlings from North Blue. Sakazuki. who is from North Blue himself, naturally wouldn't doubt that there might be some ruthless people coming out of North Blue. Then cooperate with Doflamingo's cultivation and thunderfruit. The potential for the Donquixote family is already troubling. If you don't deal with them sooner, it will be a disaster in the future. But that guy Doflamingo is all round, and he seems to maintain a certain weird relationship with Marie Joyce, so that Marie Joyce put pressure on their naval headquarters. That guy Doflamingo doesn't do anything too much for things, naval headquarters can't easily shoot him. Sooner or later, those idiots on Marie Joyce will pay for their short-sightedness, Sakazuki cursed. Sunlight Island and the port were in turmoil at this time, as if someone was fighting in groups. Doflamingo walked down the boat ladder, and asked Senor beside him in surprise. Didn't you say that this place is for eating fast and praying to Buddha? Why is it so violent? Taking advantage of his height, Doflamingo observed the chaotic pier from afar. On the surface, it looks like a gang fight, but if you look closely, you will find that a group of people are beating a strong man. What's even more ridiculous is that this group of people never beat that strong man. The strong man looked like he was in his 20s, and he was beaten and kicked, but he always had a confident smile on his face. Doflamingo always felt that this guy looked familiar, but he didn't recognize who he was for a while. Until he found that the strong man was kicking, as if his already burly body had become even stronger. Karma. The burly man who suddenly grew in size shouted violently and immediately punched out. The swift wind of the punch even directly lifted the two thin men into the air, and the other strong man who was hit by his punch flew off the ground like a cannonball. Along the way, he knocked a few unlucky spectators into the air, and then rolled a few times on the ground, and by coincidence, he rolled in front of Doflamingo. Doflamingo gently raised one foot and stepped on the strong man, stopping his rolling. At this moment, Doflamingo's eyes flashed brightly, and he suddenly remembered who this guy was. Strange Monk, also called Broken Monk U Rouge. Unknown ability, Sky Islander, one of the supernovas of the same generation as Straw Hat Crew after 20 years. The height of U Rouge itself is very conspicuous, a bit taller than Doflamingo, and now his physique can be said to be a little giant, about 5 or 6 meters in size. I didn't remember his hexagonal weapon like a huge pencil, but he was wearing a glove. Uroge was explosive, and after turning the strong man over, he followed the rhythm of a child with one stroke. But just when U Rouge was about to kill the last minion with one punch, he suddenly felt stiff all over, as if he was being controlled by something. Then, his shoulders sank. He glanced at the back of his head. He saw a figure in a black suit, who had already stood on his shoulder at some point, and could vaguely see a few slender hairs from the little finger of his right hand. The line hangs down. It is also these thin threads that seem to have controlled themselves, making them unable to move. This made Urouge's heart sink. He can be said to be invincible all over the island in Sunshine Island. He has never met such a person who can easily subdue him, especially. He also stimulated his ability. In a state of explosion. Foo-fur-fur-fur-fur. Doflamingo stood on Urouge's shoulder, smiled evilly and said, "Hey, big man, are you interested in going to the Blue Ocean with me?" Blue Ocean? Uroge frowned, and his tone was a little puzzled. That's right, this Sky Island is too small. A talent like you shouldn't be buried in this kind of place. You might as well go to the Blue Sea with me. The sea there is wider. And more suitable for you. Doflamingo touched own chin, said to Urouge. Doflamingo still recognizes Urouge's potential. First of all, Urouge was already 45 years old when he descended from the fish pond of Sky Island to the sea below. In other words, Urouge had wasted more than 20 years in this ghostly place called Sky Island. But as soon as he stepped into the sea, he became one of the supernovas of the year. It can be seen that in his 40s, Urouge is still very capable of playing. But that's not the point. The point is that Urouge entered New World later, and clashed with the Big Mom Pirates. One of the 4 generals of the Big Mom Pirates, Snug, was abolished on the spot. Since then, the 4 generals have become 3 generals. There is a very simple comparison here, that is, Snag, who has been carefully cultivated by the Big Mom Pirates for so many years and has become one of the general stars, was born in the wild, and Urouge, who came down from Sky Island without much training, gave him a hammer exploded. What does this mean? That in itself speaks volumes about Urouge's talent and talent. If it is possible to take this guy out of the fish pond like Sky Island 20 years in advance, take him to a wider world, to gallop in the new world, and cultivate him well. Uroge is the worst. He has to be a droughtjack, or even Quinn's level of power. So, what is this? This is the most scarce resource in the new era, talent. Doflamingo really did not expect that when he wandered around Sky Island by himself, he would not only be able to handle Thunderfruit, but also meet the young and strong Urouge who is in a developmental stage. Who are you? Eurogue did not answer Doflamingo's invitation, but instead asked about Doflamingo's identity. Donquixote Doflamingo. A passing pirate? Doflamingo replied after thinking for a while. What good will I do if I leave with you? Eurogue asked again. Doflamingo grinned and said, I can see that you have that violent gene in your bones. You really want to vent violence to your heart's content, right? But in this ghostly place where you eat fast and chant Buddha, you are always a different kind, even if you got the status of a monk, and you can't change anything. You are a heretic in their eyes. And if you follow me, you can vent your inner violence as much as you want, and I will give you better resources, makes you stronger. The blue ocean is huge. Big man, there are countless strong people on that ocean, don't you want to meet them? Uruge's heart trembled, indeed, as this guy named Doflamingo said. Since he was a child, he felt that a violent demon resided in his heart. Whenever he beat someone to the point of bleeding, he would feel very excited and very exciting. Because of this, he was regarded as a monster and a heretic by the people on this island. In order to integrate into them, Uruge chose to become a monk. In fact, although he looked like a reckless man, he was actually very intelligent, and he passed the examination soon and became a monk. Apart from the repressed violence in his heart, Uruge actually has no bad habits. He can eat fast, chant Buddha, and control his various desires for fame, status, and wealth. Apart from the violence, he is really like a perfect monk. But in the end, the Buddha nature he worked so hard to cultivate couldn't suppress the violent factors in his body. In the monastery, he fought and severely injured all his senior brothers. Afterwards, he was expelled from the monastery and became a broken monk. Since then, he has been hanging out on the island until now. What if I refuse? Although Uruge was very moved, he still couldn't help asking. There was a clang, as if a sharp knife had come out of its sheath, and in the next second, Uruge felt a chill on his neck. There was no doubt that it was a knife stuck to his carotid artery. If you refuse, I'll kill you here, and I'll be doing good every day, Doflamingo said without hesitation. His tone was very cold, which surprised Uruge, and then shouted, Wait, didn't you just say you were a pirate? Yeah, what's the matter? Doflamingo was a little puzzled. You are a pirate. Why do you do good deeds every day? Eurogue asked very confused. Are pirates such an inconvenience? Doflamingo jumped off Uruge's shoulders and landed in front of Uruge. But Uruge still couldn't move. Doflamingo looked at Uruge, raised the corners of his mouth, put on his trademark evil smile, and said, Whether it's evil or good, whatever I think, I can do. Why, this is the pirate master. As he said that, Doflamingo put the heart in his hand on Uruge's neck again, and asked softly, Then, tell me the answer, big man. Do you want to be my subordinate, go to the blue sea with me, and start a new life woolen cloth? Swallowing slightly nervously, Uruge finally said, No problem, anyway, I've had enough of staying in this damned place. Judging from his habit of speaking, it is obvious that Uruge is not as calm and composed as he was 20 years later, and now he is more irritable and frivolous. But it's normal to think about it. He's only in his 20s, and his state in his 40s must be different. After getting the answer, Doflamingo took Zindu away from Uruge's neck, drew a flower shadow in front of him chicly, put the knife into its sheath and asked, Then, tell me your name. Eurogue. My name is Uruge. Eurogue looked at Doflamingo and responded. Eurogue, for countless days and nights in the future, you will definitely feel grateful for today's decision. Doflamingo patted Uruge's strong arm confidently and said with a smile. The capital of Seven Waters, located in the first half of the Grand Line, is an autonomous island under the government of the world. The highest leader of the island is called the mayor. As early as hundreds of years ago, a large group of the world's top shipbuilders gathered here, and with the development of time, it has also become a holy place for shipbuilding. It can be said that most of the famous ships in the world are basically built from the capital of Seven Waters. For example, the Oro Jackson of the current One Piece Roger comes from here. Of course, the most powerful thing is not this ship, but the ancient craftsmen of the capital of Seven Waters, who created the Pluto, which is known as one of the three ancient weapons. At this time, the capital of Seven Waters is still very prosperous. Ships, large and small, will basically stop and anchor here. The factories of major shipbuilding companies are running day and night. Merchant ships, transport ships, and armed ships, special ships are constantly being manufactured like dumplings. This is due to the fact that Marine has maintained a stable era for nearly 2 decades. Whether it is the Grand Line or the Four Seas, the number of pirates today is at a low ebb, far less rampant than when rocks swept the Four Seas. It is also because of the stable period of more than 20 years that the development of the world is very good, the economy is prosperous, and the people's lives are relatively stable. The most intuitive point is to look at Bailey's inflation. Bailey at this stage is different from that in 20 years. Compared with Bailey, it is simply heaven and earth. The capital of 7 waters has also enjoyed this wave of benefits, but I'm afraid it hasn't been long. With the advent of the era of great pirates, street thugs, gangsters, murderers, and villains from all islands will all hold high the banner of freedom, and come to this sea to do 10 things NV. Wherever they go, they are like locusts passing through, destroying everything. And the more pirates there are, the more tragedy will be caused, and the life of the people will become more unstable and precarious. Just as the so-called knowledge of etiquette is based on the truth, people can improve their spiritual civilization only when they live a good life. When you start to live a precarious life, it is easy to start to go on an evil path that you never imagined because of a certain stimulus. Pirates are like this. A group of pirates came to a certain island. Afterwards, the island was dilapidated and there was no hope. Those who survived, under the pressure of life, most likely hung their heads with a knife in their hands, put it on the waistband, and go to sea to be a pirate. Therefore, this is a vicious cycle. The opening of the era of great pirates will lead to the birth of countless pirates, but is it all because of the legendary great secret treasure? No, it's more because I couldn't survive in the first place. As soon as there are more pirates, the operating cost of each route will definitely increase. As soon as the operating cost increases, the prosperity of commerce and trade will inevitably decline. If commerce and trade decline again, the economy will regress even more. More people will not be able to eat. Fighting and fighting, he became a pirate again. The final result is that the next 20 years will be hard for the family. And the capital of 7 waters is a typical example. Less than 4 or 5 years after the start of the era of great pirates, the capital of 7 waters, which was originally prosperous, went bankrupt quickly. 9 out of 10 shipbuilding companies on the island could die, and the last one had to die. It is relying on the order of the world's government to survive for a while. It wasn't until Master Tom of the Murlocs successfully opened the sea train that the capital of 7 waters, which was surrounded by pirates, was gradually rejuvenated. At this time, in the port of the capital of 7 waters, many people were looking at a red shadow in the sky with shocked eyes. In the astonished eyes of everyone at the pier, there was a bang, and a strange object like a red jewel slammed into the empty bay of the port, causing a lot of water splashes. Then, the bright red blood film spread out quickly, and then gathered together again. In just a moment, it condensed into a fist-sized blood drop, suspended behind Doflamingo. That's right, this thing that fell from the sky is the flamingo lip of Donquixote family. Is this the blue ocean? A burly man stood beside Doflamingo, observing the surroundings curiously. The latter was lowered quickly, and Doflamingo greeted him. Let's go. Uroge and Senor immediately followed Doflamingo's footsteps. As for Beckman, this guy was thinking about how to develop the fruit ability and how to practice hockey, and he didn't intend to get off the ship. Doflamingo didn't bother to care about him, so he just stayed on the boat to watch the boat. As for Beckman, can he handle the pressure? There is a high probability that there is no problem. After all, there are basically no particularly powerful ruthless people in the first half of the Grand Line. Logia is enough to run amok, not to mention that Beckman himself can be regarded as a somewhat capable person. Young master, do you want to see the ship that was ordered here earlier? Senor asked. Hasn't the phone bug contacted you before? They said that the ship has been built and is parked at the port, waiting for us to receive it. Then don't be in a hurry, go to see Master Tom first, and study the matter of this arc. Doflamingo said calmly. If he didn't get the blueprint of Arca Proverbs from Sky Island, Doflamingo might still be a little interested in his new ship, but right now, he is looking forward to the arc more. I found a few random people on the road, asked a few times, and found out where Master Tom was. In fact, Master Tom's life in the capital of 7 waters is not very good, and he is somewhat struggling. From the perspective of scale, his shipbuilding company is actually a small workshop, located in the abandoned dock of the capital of 7 waters. The so-called waste docks are those guys who ordered new ships in the capital of the 7 waters, and left their old ships here casually. The shipyards in the capital of the 7 waters dismantled the old ships and took them away. The useless junk is all thrown into the scrapyard. Over time, this place has become a cemetery for ships. Theoretically speaking, the most convenient means of transportation in the capital of 7 waters is Brew, which is the horse that can ride in the waterways. No, plus Doflamingo and Urouge are capable users, so it's better not to toss about such dangerous items as much as possible. So the group went to Master Tom on foot. Speaking of Urouge's ability, Doflamingo glanced at Urouge curiously and said, I forgot to ask you on the way, Urouge, are you a capable person? Well, Paramisha Karma fruit ability user. Uroge replied immediately. Hearing the name, it sounds like you are very powerful. Doflamingo asked with great interest. What is the specific ability? Speaking of this, Eau Rouge said with a little embarrassment. The name looks very powerful, but the actual performance is mainly to be beaten, and then transform these sufferings into one's own strength, explode and return. Speaking of this, Eau Rouge rolled his eyes and said, if you want me to say, it might as well be called transformation fruit or something. Not necessarily. After I go back, I'll look up the relevant information for you and see if there is any record in the Devil Fruit illustrated book. Doflamingo said with a smile. But even if the ability of this causal fruit is relatively simple, if the main focus is to accept karma and strengthen oneself, it is actually a very good fruit. If Eau Rouge can bear it, then his strength will continue to increase. Belongs to the ability to fight more and more bravely. If you look at it this way, within the same level, it is estimated that there are very few masters in the fighting department who can beat Eau Rouge in singles. As long as you can't beat Eau Rouge at the beginning, you will find that this guy is playing harder and harder. At first, he is at the same level as you. After playing for a while, you don't deserve to use the same brand of plasma TV as him. Maybe in the original story, that General Star Snag was tossed about like this. He may be stronger than Eau Rouge at the beginning, but he didn't kill Eau Rouge instantly, and then Eau Rouge continued to explode, and finally pinned him to the ground. Therefore, Doflamingo still has great expectations for Eau Rouge. This ability is really good. What's more, since it is called Karma Fruit, maybe if it is developed to a deeper level, or if the ability is awakened, what more mysterious power may it have? Thinking of this, Doflamingo added another sentence to Eau Rouge. Devil Fruit's ability still has a deeper awakening stage. There are many abilities. It seems ordinary in the early stage, but once awakened, it will be very powerful. It may not be impossible. Chatting about these trivial matters, the three of Doflamingo soon walked to the remote abandoned dock in the capital of Seven Waters. There are not many people here, and the environment is even worse. Looking from a distance, there is a small workshop under the hull of the bridge. A strong Murloc man seems to be rummaging through a pile of sundries in front of the door. It's hard to imagine that this is Master Tom, who is known as the world's #1 shipbuilder in the shipbuilding industry. Looking back at the high-rise shipyard in the capital of Seven Waters, Doflamingo twitched his lips and said, sometimes, the master is wandering and the clown is in the hall, which makes sense. Because he is a Murloc, and his skills are too high, that's why he was excluded. Humans are really xenophobic and vicious creatures. Master Tom, who was looking for something in a pile of sundries, soon heard movement behind him. As soon as he turned his head, he saw 3 figures walking towards him. One of them was so strong that even he, a Murloc, was incomparable. He was full of tendons, and he looked very mighty. The other 2, by human standards, should be very handsome. Judging from the order and the main position of the 3 of them when they walked, the man in the middle with short blonde hair and sunglasses should be the speaker. Master Tom? Doflamingo walked near the sundries, looked at the Murloc and asked. Hearing this address, Tom put a smile on his face and said, it's me, is the guest planning to book a boat? Generally, only the guests who book the boat will call him Master Tom. That's right, we want to customize a ship. Doflamingo immediately agreed. Those guys, please enter the house first. There are many design drawings in it, whether it is an armed ship, a transport ship or a special ship, we can build here. Master Tom said enthusiastically. There is no such thing as arrogance, he is very tight, and he has a generous personality, not to mention that he is now open for business, which is what he does. Naturally, he is very enthusiastic about customers like Doflamingo. Because it is the house where the Murlocs live, the house is also very tall, and Doflamingo and others don't feel depressed when they enter it. At most, Eau Rouge is a little bit, but it doesn't matter. As soon as he entered the door, he saw all kinds of blueprints pasted on the wall. Master Tom quickly entered the sales promotion mode and said, these are all designed by me, and each one is very distinctive, like this one. Judging from the hull, you can feel that it must be fast, right? This can be called a fast battleship. Master Tom introduced it here excitedly, but soon, Doflamingo raised his hand and said, Master, what if we brought the design drawings here? Master Tom was taken aback for a moment, but quickly said again, that's no problem at all. However, this made Master Tom a little regretful, mainly because, if he brought his own design drawings, he would lose a small amount of design fees. But the business here itself is deserted, so it is a little bit to make a little money. Thinking of this, Master Tom said, then can you please bring me the blueprint? Master, there is no need for guests. My name is Donquixote Doflamingo, and you can call me Dove. Doflamingo said politely, and then Senor took out the blueprints. For technical talents, Doflamingo has always valued them very much, because they are more scarce than the fighters. And Master Tom is recognized as the strongest in the shipbuilding industry, and he is also a cross-border master. He has abruptly crossed the border from shipbuilding to building trains. Can he not be great? No matter what era it is, science and technology are the primary productive forces. Not to mention how huge the profits will be if Master Tom's shipbuilding technology can be industrialized on a large scale. Just say that the sea train built later can be regarded as an epoch-making product. The government of the world attaches great importance to it. Before the sea train came out, the government of the world was still planning to build bridges to connect the islands. I don't know what they were thinking. What does shortening the distance of transportation mean to a large ruling class? It means being able to extend one's core strength to every corner of the ruling range more efficiently. At a higher level, it can keep the ruling class alive. Therefore, Doflamingo respects Master Tom very much, and there is no chance now, because Master Tom loves the capital of Seven Waters deeply, that in the future, Doflamingo still hopes to include Master Tom in the Donquixote family. The feasibility of this idea is very high, because after Roger's execution, Master Tom will be targeted by the government of the world, and then he will be arrested on the charge of building a ship for One Piece. But later, the sea train technology bought some time for Master Tom, but in the end he was framed and executed. As long as the time comes, Doflamingo will help and include Master Tom in the Donquixote family. It shouldn't be a problem. As for how to help, Doflamingo intends to become 7 warlords of the sea, so Black and White can take all, which is more convenient for him to act. And the 7 warlords of the sea and their forces have extrajudicial immunity. As long as Master Tom is willing to become a member of the Donquixote family, the world government cannot target FTE legally. Senor handed over the design drawing of Arc Proverbs to Master Tom. At first, Master Tom didn't pay much attention to it. Basically, custom-made ships are like this, whether it is a 3-masted sailing ship, a foreign ship or a submarine, the overall technical design is not bad. The most difficult thing is to satisfy the customer's appearance design. But after 2 glances, Master Tom was a little confused. No. This ship shouldn't be used for sailing on the sea, right? First of all, it doesn't have sails, and secondly, its row of oars is a bit unique, and the structure of the hull is too big. According to it, judging from this power structure, the speed is very slow. Master Tom muttered. But the more you look at the design drawings behind, the brighter Master Tom's eyes are. No, this is a shipbuilding concept that is completely detached from modern shipbuilding technology. Compared with sails and outer wheel power, it is more inclined to energy power, Master Tom said to himself again. Doflamingo didn't urge anything, just sat quietly at the messy desk and waited. Senor seemed to be quite interested in the design drawings in the room, looking around. Yorogue was completely bored, leaned against the wall and started playing. After more than half an hour, Master Tom suddenly came back to his senses, and said very sorry to Doflamingo. I'm sorry, guest. Dover, I accidentally became fascinated by watching, and kept you waiting for a long time. Doflamingo didn't care about this at all, and smiled and waved his hands. Master, what do you think of the design on this drawing? It's very delicate and powerful, but I've never heard of this kind of design, and judging from some words and measurement units inside, this should be an ancient technical design drawing, right? Master Tom asked. Doflamingo froze for a moment. Is this a professional? Anyway, when he looked at it, he didn't see what the problem was. When the master saw it, he deduced the result from the details. Doflamingo nodded when he heard the words, and said very calmly, it is an ancient design drawing, and it came from the sky. It is very likely that it is the technology of the moon. Moon? Master Tom asked confusedly. There are intelligent life on the moon? Yes. Doflamingo explained. It can be called moon people. They have already immigrated to the place where we are, such as the Sky Island people, who are their descendants of immigrants. Sky Island. So that's the case. This is the moon technology that came down from Sky Island, Master Tom said with emotion. I have to say that this kind of technology made him very excited, even a bit regretful. If I had known this, I should have followed Roger. They went to see Sky Island together. Maybe I would. There will be more discoveries that can give me better inspiration. But soon, Master Tom sorted out his emotions, and said, this blueprint is very good. If you use it to fly, then there is no problem at all. Hey, what if it is used both in the sea and in the air? Doflamingo cleared his throat and asked. That's a big problem. Master Tom said in a deep voice. Ancient technology does not mean it is completely suitable. Nowadays, there are many advanced theories that were not considered in ancient times. The design of this Arc Proverb, the picture is obviously air-to-air. It has neither outer wheels nor sails, but uses paddles, but unfortunately, these paddles are not designed to provide power, but to adjust the course. Yes, that is to say, These rows of oars have played the role of rudder. Do you understand? Doflamingo was stunned for a moment. Good guy. He thought it was a rowing boat, but it turns out that the rowing is not for power, but for steering. What about the power of this ship? Senor also asked curiously. Energy power. Master Tom said without hesitation. Here is an energy converter that I don't quite understand. Generally speaking, you can treat it as an internal combustion engine. It can burn some kind of high-efficiency energy. It may be minerals or solid, liquid, or gaseous. In short, this device will provide all the power for the ship, including the above buoyancy device, and this buoyancy device is the core of the entire ship's ability to fly installed. From these perspectives, there is no problem with replicating ships. The key is efficient energy needs to be solved. Speaking of this, Master Tom paused and said, but even if everything is solved, your ship is only suitable for flying in the air. Once it falls into the sea, it will be very troublesome. If you want to use both sea and air, you need to make design changes. Then Master Tom, can you do it? Doflamingo's eyes lit up, and asked. It's possible, but let me say first, I can't solve this energy problem. Even if it is changed, at most it can sail on the sea. If you don't solve the energy problem, you can't take off. Master Tom thought. Think backwards. That's fine. Doflamingo responded immediately. Secondly, Master Tom said here, with a slightly embarrassed expression on his face, and muttered in a low voice. This kind of modification. Cough. You have to pay more for the cost. Before he finished speaking, Senor threw a bag of Kimberly on the table and said, Master, money is not a problem. Master Tom immediately patted his chest and said, that's a deal. City of Seven Waters, the end of the bridge above the abandoned dock area. Actually, it is also abandoned. This bridge originally connected another block, but this block was destroyed by the God of Water, Akula Ragna, a few years ago. The so-called Gods of Water refers to a super-large tsunami that occurs every year near the sea area of the capital of Seven Waters. It will surround the capital of Seven Waters from all directions and then submerge it. Because the tsunami seems to be increasing every year, the capital of the Seven Waters also has to be built up a little bit every year. From the bottom of the sea, the capital of the Seven Waters is a very large abandoned city as the foundation, accumulated section by section. Changing the design drawing does not mean that it can be changed in just 1 or 2 clicks, especially since Master Tom is still a person who strives for perfection. So it is expected to wait a few days in the capital of Seven Waters. After the blueprint is finished, Doflamingo can leave. The follow-up is to build the ship. It will take a long time. When it is ready, Master Tom will contact Doflamingo with a phone bug, and then come to pick up the ship. Doflamingo has no objection to the matter of staying in the capital of Seven Waters for a few days. It just so happens that if you stay here, you can also have a relationship with Master Tom, which can pave the way for the future. At this time, at the end of the broken bridge, a sun lounger was spread here, with a parasol set up above it, and red wine and a fruit plate were placed beside it. Doflamingo is lying here right now, holding a book. There is also a maid on the side, fanning Doflamingo. The sun is just right and the sea breeze is cool. This day is comfortable. Just as a gust of sea breeze blew past Doflamingo's ears, Doflamingo's page-turning action paused for a moment, and he glanced behind him out of the corner of his eye. Oh. It's been a long time, I thought I saw the wrong person, Doflamingo. A deep, magnetic voice came from behind Doflamingo's side. The maid who was fanning Doflamingo was startled, and the fan in her hand almost hit Doflamingo's face. Sorry, my lord. The maid said in a panic. Doflamingo, who dodged the fan, said helplessly, Carrie, don't make such a big fuss next time. Okay. I have a friend here. You go and rest first. Yes, my lord. The maid let out a sigh of relief, and left quickly. After the maid left, the figure also walked up to Doflamingo, looked down at the book in his hand, and didn't even look at the cover, only drawing conclusions from the 2 short pages. You are so brave, Doflamingo. This is a banned book. 200 years ago, Alabasta's great scholar, Bastille Robertsville, was sentenced to death for writing such a book, Change and Fire. Then the figure frowned and said with a smile. You have confirmed my reading in just 2 pages, which means. You have read this book a lot, Mr. Dorag from the Valiant Army. Doflamingo laughed said. That's right. The person who appeared here inexplicably was Monkey Dorag, Pooh's son, who had a relationship with Doflamingo in West Blue O'Hara. Ha ha ha. Dorag smiled and said, I just happened to read it. After the 2 exchanged pleasantries for a while, Drago asked. I heard that you are a pirate now, what's the matter? People are sitting at home, and the pot comes from the sky. I don't believe you don't know the situation. Doflamingo gave Dorag a blank look and said. Dorag and Dr. Vegapunk are friends. When he first met Dr. Vegapunk, he mentioned this sentence. So what happened to Dr. Vegapunk, can he not know? Sighing slightly, he said, however, it's a bit regrettable that the doctor couldn't be saved. Don't think of Marine like a dragon's pond and a tiger's den. Drago smiled, and then said, I have contacted the doctor, he is living a very chic life now, and the government of the world has given him a lot of funds. In the past 2 years, Dr. Vegapunk and Dorag were still free, and they could even meet together after Ohara was destroyed. But when Dorag decided to engage in song life, everything changed. In addition, Dr. Vegapunk also inherited some of Ohara's spirit, understood some blank 100-year history, and became wary of the world's official government to ultimate. And his talent was gradually valued by the world's government, so that a marine science team was formed directly, and Kizaru Paluzolino, who was then admiral at the time, personally led the team to protect Dr. Vegapunk. At that time, Dr. Vegapunk and Drago had already been unable to communicate with each other. Bartholomew Kuma sneaked into the 7 warlords of the sea and joined the science army, most likely in order to re-establish this connection. After chatting for a few words, Doflamingo suddenly said, but it's okay to be a pirate, Dorag, can you feel it? The change of the times. This is not the first time this kind of change has occurred. Marines and pirates are like yin and yang. When one is strong, the other is naturally weak. However, there is a cycle, generally between 15 and 30 years. According to the conclusion of historical experience, it is common in 20 years, and the Canyon of Gods, Rock's pirate event. Today, it has almost reached this range. Judging from the situation on the sea, the same is true. The careerists in world are all ready to go, as if they are waiting for a powder keg to explode. Marinea's conscription has also been a little weak in the past 2 years, and the most important thing is the high-level lack of recruitment. Dorag said softly. Was the era of the Great Pirate opened quickly at the order of One Piece Roger? Obviously not. Roger was just the man who finally kicked the gate of that era, and poured oil on the fire behind the gate. In fact, even without Roger, the wave of the new era is rolling in. What Dorag said just now is a sign, and the simplest point is to look at the heroes of the new era. Be it Gecko Moria, Crocodile, or the red-haired Shanks, Dracule Mahawk. These the heroes who are ready to go in the new era. Will they give up being pirates because there is no execution by Roger? Obviously not. Marine is indeed a little bit out of touch. Sengoku, Garp, Zephyr and other older generations take the lead. Marine is not too young, and it is impossible to say that he will personally deal with everything. In Marine, the younger generation who can take on the responsibility alone, headed by Sakazuki, Kuzan, and Paluzolino, are actually still lacking a lot. The simplest comparison, New World Charlotte Linlin, Kaido, Ochaku, Silver Axe and others are rampant. Can Marines like Sakazuki face it alone and deal with it? Still not enough. Pirates seem to grow faster than Marines. This also proves that in the era suppressed by Marine for nearly 2 decades, its order is gradually collapsing. Like reincarnation, the era of pirates seems to be coming. And 20 years later, Marine has undoubtedly reached its heyday again after 20 years of military preparations, recuperation and recuperation. The same is true for pirates. The extremely evil generation and the old overlords are not ambitious. The contest between Marines and pirates will break out in that era, and the outcome of this war will continue to determine the world trend for the next 15 to 30 years. But in this seemingly repeated contest between Marines and pirates, there is still a deeper contradiction hidden, that is, the conflict between the decadent rule of the world's official government and the gradually rising ideology of life in the past 800 years collide. By then, it will not be just Marines and pirates competing for the supremacy of this sea, but a confrontation of a new order. As Doflamingo said in Summit War, after 20 years of great chaos and great storm, there is no justice or evil at all, and history will be written by the final winner. And justice must belong to the winner. Regardless of the identity of the person who captured the final victory before, was it Marine? Celestial dragons? The world's most ferocious criminal? Pirate overlord? Even if he is just a stinky beggar, when the fruits of victory are obtained, they will all be incarnations of justice. Both of them were at the end of the bridge. Doflamingo was sitting on the sun chair, and Dorag was standing aside wearing a cloak, watching the sea breeze blowing by. Neither of them spoke. It seems that from the distant sea level, they have seen the tide of the times rolling in. After a long time, Drago asked softly, so are you going to bet on being a pirate for the next 20 years? Foo-fur-fur-fur-fur. Doflamingo laughed. He slowly looked at Dorag, and then said, only chaos can destroy order, and only chaos can give birth to a new one. Order. Drago frowned slightly, and then said, your thoughts are really getting more and more dangerous. No, it's just that you still have the last innocence, Dorag. I know very well, You will understand sooner or later. Doflamingo grinned, looking at Dorag with deep meaning. Understand what? Drago looked at the confident Doflamingo and asked curiously. Reform is not a dinner party. It's not writing, it's not painting and embroidery, it can't be so elegant, so calm, gentle, and gentle. Change is a riot, a violent action of one class overthrowing another class. Doflamingo he patted Drago on the shoulder and said softly. And listening to these words, Drago looked at the sea, unable to speak for a long time, his eyes gradually deepened. To sum up, Dorag's thought changes can be divided into 4 stages. In the first stage, when he was young, he aspired to become a righteous marine and protect the people on the sea. In the second stage, when first was in marine, I saw clearly the shackles on marine, and discovered the darkness shrouded in the world behind. Layers of darkness and decay. It is stealing the justice of this world, stealing the fruit of the world. In the third stage, Drago found that marine couldn't change the darkness behind it, and there were too many constraints, so he left marine angrily and founded the self-volunteer army, hoping to change all this from the standpoint of the self-volunteer army. However, the existence of the self-young army is still a royalist, with illusions, and behind it is still the support of nobles from all over the world. Otherwise, where does Drago get the funds? Can you pull up an army? Don't underestimate the army. In the fourth stage, Drago realized that such a moderate volunteer army cannot be violent and launch bloody reforms, it cannot be thorough, crazy, and decisive. To change the world. Therefore, he regrouped those like-minded people from the Yongjun army, and initiated the most violent and resolute reforms. Since then, the Gemming army was established. It is also because of this that the Gi army has become the most hostile reactionary organization in the world. It is also because of this that Drago has become the so-called world's most ferocious criminal, step by step from a son of a hero. Because, at this moment, Dorag finally realized what Doflamingo said now. Reform is not about treating guests to dinner, not writing articles, not painting and embroidering. Change is insurrection, the violent act of one class overthrowing another. Only blood can set off a complete change. Only iron and fire can create an unwavering team with faith and life. When Drago came back to his senses, he looked around, and there were only sun loungers left. Doflamingo, who was here just now, has left. This made Drago couldn't help laughing. He moved 2 steps, sat on the empty sun lounger, looked at the sea level in the distance, and whispered softly. Naive. Really many years, I have never been educated like this, he he he. Meanwhile, South Blue, Battery Island. In an ordinary residential house, there are 2 districts. In the kitchen, the virtuous and gentle beautiful woman extinguished the fire on the stove, and skillfully took out the food in the frying pan, and took it to the dining room after a while. On the other side, outside the yard, the man split the firewood and piled it up neatly. He couldn't help but wipe the sweat from his forehead with his hand. It's really that my body is getting weaker and weaker. I'm sweating profusely when I chop some firewood. The man put the axe on the pile of firewood and said with a mocking smile. If someone who is familiar with him sees his face, he will be surprised by it. Because this man who looks like a farmer is the famous One Piece Gola da Roger. Roger, the beautiful woman opened the window and greeted with a bright smile on her face. It's time to eat, Roger. Oh. Roger waved his hand smartly and said, here we come, Rouge. That's right. That beautiful woman who seemed to be radiating warmth and sunshine was Roger's wife, a gentle, virtuous, but also extremely strong and great woman. Walking into the room, seeing that Rouge was still busy bringing out the food in the kitchen, Roger hurried forward to help, and couldn't help but said, you are pregnant now, I have already told you about these trivial matters. Just leave it to me to do it. Got it. Got it. Rouge smiled and agreed. Whenever Roger thinks about it like this, she will agree like this, Roger has nothing to do with her. After sitting down, Roger served Rouge a bowl of rice and said with a smile, eat more, you represent 2 people now. In these last moments, Rouge became pregnant with Roger's blood. Both of them are very happy and look forward to the arrival of this child. Roger even has a name ready for the baby. If it is a girl, then he hopes that his daughter can spend her life in peace, so the name he prepared for her is N. And if it's a boy, then he hopes that his son will become a brave man at sea in the future. After getting the answer from Raftel, Roger knew that he had come early, but he didn't have more time to wait. So, if it's a boy, let him be your trump card, 20 years later. Ace. 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 The 2 were talking and laughing and looking forward to the good times after the baby was born, but at this moment, Roger suddenly coughed uncontrollably. This made Rouge panic, and when she was about to stand up, Roger finally suppressed his cough. He slowly spread the palm covering his mouth, and there was a pool of dirty blood on it. This made Roger's eyes much sadder. Dot and Rouge across the table also saw the dirty blood, and her tears flowed down the corners of her eyes instantly. That guy Crocus said, "When I start vomiting blood again, that's when I'm going to die." Roger picked up a tissue from the table, wiped the blood off his hands, and said with a shrug. Rouge whimpered and walked to Roger's side, hugged Roger's head and said, "There are still many doctors. It's useless, Rouge, my body, of course I know very well that it is terminally ill, but in fact, it is my life. Crocus is the best doctor, and thanks to him, I was able to survive the last at that time. I enjoyed the time with you, but I am really regretful. I really want to see the birth of the child, and tell him that Dad really wants to grow up with him. But, there is no way now, Rouge, I can only put all these responsibilities on your shoulders, it's really despicable. Hee hee. Roger stroked Rouge's arm and said softly. Roger's life can be called a great adventure. But at this last moment, the protagonist of this life seems to feel regret. Wouldn't it be better if when he met Rouge back then, he would have used this Batlila as his last haven, staying here and quietly being a farmer? He didn't know the answer, but he knew very well that he regretted it. I regret not being able to come back sooner, and regret not being able to spend more time with my wife. But he also knew that if he could start over that day again, he would resolutely choose to continue going to sea. He knows that there are only two things in his life that he cannot resist, one is Rouge's gentleness, and the other is the call of the sea. So he wants to stay by Rouge's side, but also wants to conquer the sea. But in the end, it's impossible to do everything. I've got everything the world wants, fame, wealth, power, status in you. If I want more to stay by your side, won't it appear that I'm too greedy? Rouge? Roger put his ear on Rouge's stomach. He murmured softly, and he was listening too. Can you? Don't go? Rouge suddenly asked in tears. Roger was shocked when he heard this, and after a long time, he smiled and said, "When I said goodbye to you at the port, if you said such a sentence, I'm afraid I really wouldn't be able to leave." Yes, at the port, when we parted, Rouge just wished Roger lightly, wishing him safe and sound, but never asked him to stay. Perhaps she knew that if she spoke, Roger, the son of the sea, would never be able to leave again. Just when Rouge was about to say something, Roger raised his hand and touched her lips, and said softly, "Listen. The child is talking to me. He is urging me to complete the mission I should do, to open the door of the new era. He can't wait to see this new era come." With tears streaming down his face, Rouge retorted, "He hasn't been born yet, how can he talk? Have you forgotten? I can hear the voices of everything." Roger smiled softly, stood up, held Rouge in his arms, and gently rubbed her soft long hair. "Does it have to be you?" Rouge rested his head in Roger's arms, and couldn't help asking. After a moment of silence, Roger said softly, "In this world, there is nothing that should be done by anyone, but I just happen to be here, at the intersection of this era and destiny, but I also just want to see. This gate, the tide of the times in the future is so turbulent and passionate, it's my little selfishness, wanting to push open that door with my own hands, that's all." Having said that, Roger paused, with a bright smile on his face and said, "I will not die, Lu Jung." "Liar." Rouge cried and beat Roger's chest. "No." Roger looked out of the window, and he seemed to see his friends scattered all over the world along the coastline. "I'm not going to die." Roger whispered again with a smile in his eyes. Also at this moment, on the Saboti archipelago, Rayleigh, who was sitting in front of the bar drinking wine, suddenly froze for a moment. Then he suddenly turned his head and looked around, which made Shao-Chi ask a little strangely, "What's the matter? Rayleigh?" "No." Rayleigh's eyes became more complicated, and he whispered, "It's nothing." Just as if he heard the murmur of an old friend. City of Seven Waters, abandoned dockyard, in Master Tom's workshop. At this time, Master Tom was sitting in front of a table with a huge design drawing on it, and Doflamingo and others surrounded the drawing. "First of all, the rowing of the oars has been retained, but I adjusted some sequences and angles. In this way, not only can it assist in turning the rudder, but it can also be truly converted into power. When necessary, it can be explosively accelerated." Master Tom held a small stick in his hand, and pointed to the row of oars on the blueprint. Doflamingo looked at that place, feeling that it is not much different from the previous design drawing. But if you take a closer look, you will find that, indeed, some changes have taken place in angles, numbers, and sequences. Thinking that Master Tom would not be fooling people, Doflamingo pretended to approve and nodded. Seeing that the Gold Master nodded, Master Tom continued, "Secondly, a rudder guiding device was installed. The previous design was completely paddle guiding. I don't know much about flying. Maybe this kind of paddle guiding it has a unique advantage in flight, so when I adjusted the paddles, I still tried to preserve the original intention of the original design. But on the sea, there is no doubt that the rudder guidance is the best in the current technology. I think to allow this ship to turn flexibly at sea, it must be installed. Senor looked at the deck of the blueprint, and indeed, under the mast post, there seemed to be an extra rudder, and there were some more devices at the stern. Then there is the foreign ship. Master Tom clapped his hands and said, if this ship wants to give full play to its performance, the crew ratio must be very high, and a high crew ratio means rich manpower. Manual rowing of paddles. If the power of the outer wheel is not installed, it is simply a waste, and for this outer wheel, I have designed two power sources. The first is to step on the wheel manually, which is also the current common power of the outer wheel, and the first is to connect the power of the outer wheel to this energy device that I don't quite understand. Speaking of this, Master Tom paused and said, if you can solve the energy problem, then as long as the ship can fly, it must also be able to drive the outer wheel drive. Of course, if it can't fly, it's not an energy problem. It is the problem of the energy device, which has nothing to do with my outer wheel. Mr. Tom, is it really necessary to install outer wheels when there are row oars? Beckman asked curiously. Normally, it's not necessary, but as I said just now, it's a pity if you don't install the ratio of this ship, and the next thing is according to your previous requirements, the specifications of this ship it is very high, so I will match it for you. In the end, it is the size of the ship. There is no doubt that according to the requirements, your ship needs to be able to carry a large number of people while satisfying the existence of multiple giants. Right? Master Tom asked with a smile. Doflamingo immediately nodded and said, yes, our Donquixote family has some Caucasian companions, so we need to take these into consideration. Judging from the current design drawings, the size and specifications of this ship are simply terrifying. It is completely a mobile fortress and a moving island. It is estimated that it is probably a part smaller than Moria's island-type battleship, Devil Bar. After all, that thing is a real island, and it is called the world's largest three-masted sailing ship, and the Devil Oz is like playing on it. The ship customized by Donquixote family needs to have the performance of load, personnel, life, entertainment, combat and other aspects. It is by no means a simple warship, but a comprehensive ship. And to meet the above various needs, the only solution is actually only one, and that is to make it bigger, and build it on multiple levels. Therefore, only the volume of huge ships can meet these needs. However, the materials required for giant ships are more critical than those of small and medium-sized ships. It is completely impossible for ordinary and single wooden structures to afford the structural support of giant ships. Your ship is specially made. This will involve the alloy technology and composite technology that I am currently researching, but you can rest assured that if I dare to use it on a ship, I can guarantee that the quality will be absolutely no problem. Not only that, the use of this alloy and high-quality wood, the composite technology, can also greatly enhance the service life and defense capability of the ship, which is very powerful. Plus, Master Tom said with a smile. Are there any flaws? Beckman asked again. Master Tom smiled a little embarrassedly and said, of course there are flaws. First of all, it's the price. Before he finished speaking, Senor once again burst out with the air of a local tyrant, and waved his hand. Master, as long as the ship is built well, money is not a problem. Cough. Master Tom coughed lightly, and then said, the biggest flaw is the weight. This alloy and composite material is far heavier than ordinary wood. And therefore, while improving the ship's defense function, it will increase the weight of the ship itself. This is a huge ship, but now it has become heavier. Naturally, the speed and flexibility of the ship will be affected, which is why I want to. The important reason for installing an outer wheel is that if you can solve the energy problem, once the outer wheel is started, it will share a large part of the power pressure. In this way, even a giant ship made of alloy and composite materials can also have a good performance at the speed of conventional armed transport ships. Doflamingo nodded involuntarily upon hearing this. As the leader of the smuggling family, Doflamingo is very familiar with armed transport ships, which are famous for their heavy load and fast speed. But this is also a comparison in the industry. Compared with conventional warships, there is actually not much advantage in speed, especially compared with fast warships. At present, it is recognized in the sea that the fastest ship while ensuring firepower is actually the standard warship equipped by naval headquarters. That thing is really powerful, it is big, and its firepower is fierce. The key is that it is fast and flexible. Of course, this warship is not without flaws, that is, under the condition of full firepower and full staffing, the endurance of the warship is actually much less than that of ships of the same specification. Maybe it is because of sacrificing these endurance capabilities that the warship is so outstanding in other aspects? Moreover, this kind of defect is actually not unacceptable to the maritime overlords with marine bases all over the world. What's wrong with my short battery life? I can replenish it wherever I go. Not only the base, our marine also enjoys the priority supply right to any port in the territory of more than 170 countries under the government of the world. So this short board in battery life is directly smoothed out by Marine's powerful logistics capabilities. Therefore, many military commentators and experts believe that the current Marine standard warships are the most versatile among all ships, and they basically have no dead ends. Although Doflamingo is very sour, I have to admit that warships are indeed so good. It is obviously impossible to expect a huge ship to be as fast as a warship, especially the ship they are currently customizing. Judging from the specifications, it can maintain the speed of an armed transport ship, which is obviously beyond Doflamingo's expectations. Belonging is a surprise. Because the ship is designed as a mothership, the inside of the hull on the left and right sides, at the waterline, is also designed with a dock function, that is to say, the ship can launch when necessary. Originally, Doflamingo was prepare special ships such as submarines and fast motorboats in the dock to make up for the lack of other performance of the ship, such as chasing the enemy. You can release fast motorboats and so on. Now, with the speed of an armed transport ship, the speed is actually not a particularly obvious shortcoming. There are 7 floors on the ship, 4 floors below the ship, and a total of 11 floors of cabin design. The bottom 2 floors are the activity space for the giants, and then there are cargo storage and material storage. I made this storage space very large. Inside what kind of ammunition can you divide by yourself? The range of living supplies, it can be said that the space in the belly of the ship is almost all used for material storage, so even when the ship is full and fully loaded, the ship can still be guaranteed for about 2 years. The long voyage of time. The upper 7 floors are the normal living area. From entertainment and accommodation, Master Tom pointed to the design drawing and introduced in detail. Let's just say that the length and width ratio of this ship is slightly larger than the Dressrosa in my impression. Apart from the super large deck, the design of the 7 floors on the ship is also magnificent enough. It was said before that it is a mobile island and a fortress, and there are living quarters and other areas on it, which can accommodate tens of thousands of people. Needless to say, the firepower system of the ship is a place where cannons can be added, so it will not be empty. At the same time, supergiant whaling crossbows are installed on all sides of the ship, which also increases the endurance of the ship. Inside the self-sufficiency slave. Judging from the specifications of this ship, even whaling is underestimated. This whaling crossbow is likely to be used for large sea beasts and even sea kings. Finally, this unique sail. It also adopts the design of a 3-masted sailing ship. After all, a 3-masted sailing ship is the most stable and efficient design so far. Tom said the master. It doesn't mean that the more sails the better, the more the faster. According to various measurements, the 3-masted sailing ship is generally the most stable and efficient sail design, no matter how many or how few, although it can be used, but either insufficient power or insufficient stability. Once encountering extreme weather, it is easy to cause shipwreck accidents due to sailing. After that, there was a miscellaneous introduction, and Doflamingo was very satisfied. After all, he is indeed the world's #1 shipbuilder, and the technology is really amazing. Since none of you have any opinions, then this design plan will be the final plan, and I will finalize it. If you want to change it later, it will be very troublesome. This ship is too big. I need to find an old friend. From the point of view of the shipbuilding factory in the capital of 7 waters, several joint efforts are needed to complete the final assembly. So once it is finalized, it is best not to make changes to the plan. Master Tom warned. That's it, Master. After thinking about it, Doflamingo finally felt that there was nothing to change, and gave an affirmative answer. Then, what is the name of this ship? I am also in the right place to name it. Master Tom asked again. Doflamingo was silent for a moment, and after thinking for a while, he said softly, let's call it the Cervantes. After finalizing the name of the ship, Doflamingo asked again, Master Tom, how long will it take to build this ship? How soon can it be launched? Master Tom was silent for a while, as if he was counting the time. After a while, he said, the various devices of this ship are very advanced, plus this super large design. Ideally, it will take 2 years. This is the most ideal state. Gone. This world benefits from the environment of islands and oceans, so ships can be said to have been lying in the most important technology since the birth of intelligent life. Therefore, the speed of shipbuilding is very fast, but even so, this Cervantes still needs at least 2 years to be built, which shows how big it is. In 2 years, Doflamingo feels a bit slow at first glance. But thinking about it again, this is like an island. 2 years seems to be quite fast. Fortunately, a reserve ship has been built, and it is stored in the port of the capital of 7 waters. Doflamingo thinks that the ship has been built, and the money has been spent. It is good to use it for 2 years. Therefore, Doflamingo no longer urges, so as to avoid stealing and cutting materials in order to pursue the speed of completion. After all, for such a big ship, it might not be possible for Doflamingo to discover it for several years. Okay then. What's the cost of the ship? Dover Langmingo asked again. As for the firepower configuration, according to the agreement, I'm just designing, and I won't implement it. Then the cost can be saved a lot. Master Tom touched his chin and said. After all, the Donquixote family is now building a munitions production line. 2 years later, it will be completely self-sufficient. In this case, there is no need to buy munitions from the market. The eliminated second-hand goods are either products of old technology. The more advanced the munitions technology, the more it will be covered by the major forces, and it will not be sold for leisure unless you give it too much. Instead of buying junk products on the market, it is better to produce some high-end products to install them yourself, and the price may even be cheaper. After all, arms rely on technical barriers and the price of materials. The profit margin is huge. In fact, it's not just the arms. Apart from the firepower configuration, the ship's decoration and other extremely expensive items were completely cut off by Doflamingo. It's not necessary. The Donquixote family itself has professional talents. When decoration is needed, just let Aunt Jorah bring people to do it. In this way, the total cost of this ship is as high as 42 billion Baileys after all unnecessary expenses are cut off. You must know that this is not the era when Bailey was worthless due to inflation 20 years later. Today, Bailey's value is still very strong. At the beginning, the investment for the MADS research team was only 20 billion Baileys. Now this ship, without all kinds of miscellaneous configurations such as ammunition, will cost more than 40 billion. Even if the Donquixote family later installs things on it, it is estimated that it will cost 60 to 70 billion Baileys to completely settle the ship. What kind of concept is this? It's not worth the price to sell the current dress Rosa in packages all over the country. To be honest, this is why Master Tom is very concerned about this project. He is not greedy for money, he is to earn funds for his own sea train project. Once this project is completed, from the design fee to the final profit, as the chief designer and chief engineer, he can earn at least several billion Baileys. In fact, with the genius design and conception of Master Tom, the reason why the entire sea train project took more than 10 years to succeed is not because of technical problems, but mainly because of the money. Although this wave will take 2 more years to build a ship, it may save 5 or 6 years in the follow-up. This is the power of money. It is impossible for Doflamingo to take out Baileys in one go. The cash is too terrifying. Once such funds are raised, it is very likely that the funds of the Donquixote family industry chain will be broken, causing uncontrollable consequences. Just kidding. 10 to 20 billion can still be done, but doubling it is not as simple as talking about it. The pressure to bear has to rise geometrically. Fortunately, shipbuilding is not so unruly. If you just bring a blueprint, you can ask the goldmaster for tens of billions of funds. It must be paid according to the staged results, so that the 42 billion Baileys will be paid in batches within 2 years. The pressure will be much less. But it is also very heavy, but it does not matter. Doflamingo needs to stretch in time to realize its cash. In fact, its assets can be said to have explosively increased. What is the reason? The reason is the land of gold on Sky Island. Based on the current price of gold alone, a gold reserve the size of an entire city is worth at least trillions of Baileys. And is the most valuable thing in the land of gold is gold? Obviously not. It is the legend of 400 years, which endows it with mystery, and the ancient culture brought by 400 years of history and culture. Simply and rudely exchanging gold can only be said to be a waste of money, which is too bad, and it takes a long time to prepare to realize this mysterious color with antiques, history and culture. It must not be released in one go and smashed its own market plate. The wealth of the Golden Land is digested. Doflamingo thinks that even with the channel of Donquixote family, it will take 6 to 7 years, or even longer, to digest. But there is no doubt that the Donquixote family, who have mastered the wealth of the Golden Land, must be tyrannical and not short of money in a short period of time. Now it is necessary to find an opportunity to assemble the fleet and go up to transport gold. In fact, Doflamingo thinks, it's better not to get all the gold at once, otherwise it will cause a lot of disturbances, trillions of gold, not to mention pirates. The world's government ******ing will have to kill him. Former celestial dragons. You are the celestial dragons, and they can kill you. So the plan is to occupy Gaia Island, control the surging ocean currents, and try to prevent other people from taking this thing to the sky. Secondly, block Angel Island, get rid of the Shandia people, and block the existence of the Golden Village as much as possible. Information. Of course, it's okay if you don't do these things. After all, in my impression, after 20 years, The land of gold has not been taken away by other people. I still have to wait for Wong Luffy and his gang to make trouble. But in fact, it is not that no one knows the existence of this thing. Like the members of the Roger Pirates, they must all know. Therefore, what should be guarded against, in case something goes wrong. In the end, Senor first paid Master Tom a check of 3 billion Baileys as the funds for the early stage. When there are phased results, according to the contract, the next step of fund delivery can be carried out. And this check must be the Donquixote family's own bill, which can be exchanged at the Donquixote family's gold exchange in the dark world, just like the one that Judge took. It is a piece of waste paper. As the top shipwright in the capital of Seven Waters, how could Master Tom not know the rules of the dark world? In particular, many materials are not in circulation in the market, so they have to be bought from the black market, such as the wood of the precious tree atom. Some of these materials were used in Roger's Oro Jackson. This boat was built by Master Tom himself. Where do you think his materials come from? It must be bought on the black market. Master Tom has no objection to this kind of check. Anyway, after the start of work, he must cash out the money and pay commissions to the major factories. You don't care whose bill it is. Can be exchanged for real gold and silver, no problem. After I get your business done, I don't need to start a business again for 10 or 8 years, and I can devote myself to the technology research and development of my sea train. Master Tom held a pipe, said to Doflamingo with a smile. He also pointed to some blueprints hanging on the wall. Although they were still very rough, Doflamingo could tell that they were not ships, but trains. If you have any financial difficulties, Master, you can contact me at any time. Anyway, we have exchanged telephone bugs. I am also very interested in the epic-making technology that you said, Master Tom. Doflamingo said with a smile. Master Tom has a very good impression of Doflamingo. It doesn't matter if he is a pirate or not, isn't Roger also a pirate? The key is that Doflamingo has always maintained respect for him, and he is generous with the money. Who doesn't like that? Definitely, if I encounter any difficulties, I will definitely come to you. Master Tom cheerfully agreed. Meanwhile, Naval Headquarters Marineford. In Marshal Kong's office, Sengoku, Garp, Zephyr, Suru and other marine bosses are all here. But their faces are very ugly at this time. Sengoku held the document handed to him by the Marshal just now, and after reading it, with a gloomy face, he said, Kinfa pirate? Can legal ones still be called pirates? There is still such a thing as legal pirates? To be precise, it's pardon and immunity. Marshal Kong bit a cigarette, exhaled the smoke, and said with an unhappy look in his eyes. I think this bullshit 7 warlords of the sea plan is just nonsense. When can we reconcile with the pirates and stand in the same camp? Garp cursed angrily. That's right, in the past 2 days, Marie Joyce has studied a new system plan in response to the current situation at sea. This plan is the 7 warlords of the sea plan. Of course, it's just a letter of intent at the moment, and nothing has been confirmed yet. The purpose of this plan is also very simple. The government of the world also has a premonition that a new round of storms for maritime supremacy is about to emerge, and a new wave of the times is also rolling in. In order to cope with these situations, they hope to further enhance their own strength, among which they can recruit pirates who can be recruited, are worthy of being recruited, and have sufficient strength for their own use. The implementation of this idea and concept is 7 warlords of the intentional door of the sea project. Anyway, I don't agree with this plan, Garp said without hesitation. After finishing speaking, he also looked at Zephyr, an old comrade in arms. Zephyr's face was also very annoyed. He hates pirates very much now. What kind of 7 warlords of the sea plan are you planning? Can he have a good face? Neither do I. Zephyr responded instantly. Sengoku Admiral held the plan in his hand, read it again, and didn't speak. On the other side, Senior Staff Officer Suru propped his chin with his hands helplessly, half leaned on the table, and did not speak. It's not that they support this plan, but they know that since the higher authorities have already taken out the letter of intent, there must be a force pushing it forward. And now the plan is sent to Marine in a grand manner. Let Marine take a look first. The meaning contained in it is obvious. It shows that the 5 elders and other decision-makers have expectations and enthusiasm for this plan. For Marine, this is already a practical problem that is difficult to solve. During this period of time, our Marine has indeed not made any achievements. I don't need to say much about the current situation in the sea, and our Marine. From the perspective of strength, there are indeed some shortcomings. It's all a long-standing malpractice, and the higher-ups will have some inappropriate ideas because of it. There's no way around it. Marshal Kong said a little carelessly. Is Marine strong? Marine is of course very strong, but at the current stage there are indeed some problems within Marine. As for the 3 admirals who claim to have the highest combat power, there is one less, but Zephyr is still relegated to the second line, and basically does not participate in marine affairs, and concentrates on running the school there. Garp is unwilling to be admiral, and he is also a hob-meat in character. Sengoku standing alone in this position of admiral is also under a lot of pressure. In this situation, Admiral can't even get it together. You said 5 elders, can they not worry about Marine's combat power? At this time, someone proposed to recruit a group of powerful pirates and give them privileges to deal with another group of pirates. This kind of proposal really moved the hearts of 5 elders and others. Of course they know that this is not a long-term solution. The most core strength of the world government is only possible, and it must be Marine. But isn't Marine a bit stretched now? So the 7 warlords of the sea is just a stopgap measure. When the Marine is adjusted and becomes strong again, and when the world government gains some new power, the 7 warlords of the sea can be discarded at any time. Toilet paper? Endure the pain for a while, wait until it is no longer needed, then cut up the carrion and regroup, no problem, right? Anyway, from the perspective of Marie Joy's decision makers, this is no problem. But in the eyes of the Marines, this is a matter of principle, and it is very serious. However, Marine is in a lower level organization. For Marie Joy's, as a violent organization, you only need to be responsible for violence. The most taboo thing is that you have brains and thoughts while having violence. Oh no. Now we are showing you the letter of intent for the 7 warlords of the sea project, so that you can prepare yourself mentally in advance, which is already a good deal for you, Marine. Don't be ungrateful. Is there no way to stop this kind of thing? Garp looked at the silence around him, and couldn't help asking again. Sengoku Admiral seemed to have finished the letter of intent again at this time, then raised his hand and stroked the braided beard on his chin, and said, "There is still a way." How? Garp asked quickly. At the end of the day, it's just a letter of intent, and it hasn't really been implemented yet. So before that, if we can achieve some major results, it proves that our Marine can still control the situation. Should be able to a certain extent, to reverse the above thinking. I reread this document, to put it bluntly, for the above people, this is also an expedient measure, not because they really value this 7 warlords of the sea. But they want to use this plan to buy us more time and give them more time, and once we can prove that it is not necessary, this letter of intent can be discarded at any time. Sengoku analyzed. What Sengoku said is absolutely correct. If it proves that Marine can still have enough power to control the situation on the sea within the range that the world government can accept and want, then the 7 warlords of the sea plan, to put it bluntly, it's just an intention that can be discarded at any time, and it's useless. Is it a major achievement? Zephyr rubbed his nose and muttered. Nowadays, the only ones in the sea that can be called significant achievements by Marine are the Whitebeard pirates, the Flying pirates, and the Roger pirates, who are still wanted but have been disbanded. To destroy any of these 3, it can be regarded as a major achievement for Marine, and it can indeed be said that it can affect the situation at sea to a certain extent and prove Marine's control over the situation again. But the question is, how can it be that simple? That guy Shiki flies in the sky all day long, and his only lair is still in Melview. That ghostly place is like a celestial pillar. The height is no less than Sky Island, let alone a warship. There is no good way for people to go up. Easy to defend, it is difficult to attack, and there is no possibility of attacking it. It is very helpless if you can't beat his lair, and you can't do anything about that guy flying all over the sky. As for Whitebeard, I'd ask the same. Why does Whitebeard like to stay on the Moby Dick instead of boarding an island? On the one hand, it is because of Whitebeard's personality and hobbies. On the other hand, it is because Whitebeard is very clear about his own advantages. As long as he is on the sea, he basically has the absolute victory advantage in naval battles. No matter how many warships you come to, Lousy will sink all of them to the bottom of the sea with one punch. In contrast, on land, although his deterrent power is still strong, it is not as terrifying as at sea. So Whitebeard is wandering in New World. If there is no special opportunity, Marine has nothing to do with him. As for the Roger pirates, let alone, there are few people in their own family, and they were not caught back then, and now they are all disbanded and broken into pieces. There are as many islands on the sea as there are stars. It is too difficult for you to dig them out, so the solution, Sengoku said, actually doesn't seem to work. Even without the 7 warlords of the sea letter of intent, wouldn't Marine want to kill them? Of course I want to, but the problem is that I can't. Just when several people were pondering these questions, the phone bug carried by General Staff Suru rang. The chief staff officer calmly took out the phone bug from his pocket, and then answered the channel. What's the matter? Great staff officer. Important information. The South Blue Marine Branch reported a strange information 2 minutes ago, saying that it is. The man paused for a moment, and then said in a deep voice, "One Piece King Roger Go surrendered there." "Suru? What nonsense are you talking about in broad daylight? We can't even catch that guy Roger. How could he not turn himself in?" However, such strange things have not happened before, and most of them are false positives. Therefore, Chief Staff Officer Suru was only briefly surprised, and quickly recovered his calm. Go through the process. First confirm the authenticity of the information, and let them fax over the photos of the scene. I am in the marshal office. After giving the order, I went back to the Chief Staff Officer and hung up the call bug too. The rest of the people also listened to the conversation, and there was no surprise on their faces. There are various branch bases every year, and such things happen. Not long ago, a branch said that Whitebeard was beaten to death. All nonsense. With such a large size of marine, there is no way for some weird things to happen occasionally. Hey. If this is true, we can wake up laughing from our dreams. If Roger is captured, the above letter of intent from 7 warlords of the sea will definitely be scrapped. Zephyr teased a little funny said a word. Yeah. Sengoku also sighed and said, although I know it's impossible, I still hope it's true. On the contrary, Garp sat there without speaking. His eyes were a little dignified, frowning and staring at the fax machine not far away. Roger turned himself in. Although this matter sounded outrageous, Garp took it as a joke at first, but soon, he felt. That bastard Roger, even if he did something outrageous, it seems that it is not incomprehensible. In particular, the Roger pirates are still disbanding. Anyway, Garp has some inexplicable premonition in his heart. While everyone was discussing the matter of 7 warlords of the sea, the fax machine placed in the corner suddenly started to move. Garp's eyes sank. He stood up abruptly, took a few strides, and walked to the fax machine, and as the pictures on it were gradually printed out of the machine, Garp's eyes became even more surprised and shocked. What the hell? This prisoner who is now being detained by the South Blue 103 branch, even if he is burned to ashes, Garp can recognize him. Roger! Garp exclaimed. Immediately, the entire marshal's office fell into an eerie silence. City of 7 Waters, Port Wharf, Doflamingo has just settled the bill with the shipyard and paid the final balance. Now, he can drive away with the new ship in port. Compared with the Cervantes, which is under construction, this originally scheduled flagship appears quite satisfactory. Call it bad, but IDA's not bad, it has everything you need, but if you say IDA's distinctive, IDA's actually nothing special. The functionality and practicality are complete, similar to the specifications of a warship, and giants can also live on it. I said, why are you in the capital of 7 Waters? So you bought a new ship? A familiar voice came from Doflamingo's side. Doflamingo looked at the figure, and then at another dock. Well, there was also a brand new boat just launched there. The overall design is very impressive, and the figurehead is still a dragon head. That's right. The person who came out of nowhere to talk to Doflamingo was exactly the one Doflamingo met 2 days ago. And judging from the boat, it was obvious that Drago appeared in the capital of 7 Waters because his boat was ready. You guys always appear quietly, aren't you afraid of scaring people? Doflamingo joked. So far, it shouldn't scare you, Drago responded. Doflamingo didn't bother with him, asking, is that your boat? Well, it's really fate, the two of us got our new boat on the same day, Drago said with emotion. It is indeed fate, he and Doflamingo have not met many times, and this is only the 3rd time. But every time, they met by chance and never made an appointment with each other. Thinking of this, Drago suddenly said, what you said about that day, But before Drago finished speaking, Doflamingo smiled and waved his hands and said, I'm just talking casually, you don't have to ask me anything, you still have to find the answer yourself. Not to mention, I'm a pirate, just say a few words, do you still take it seriously? Drago frowned, and naturally understood that Doflamingo was unwilling to say more on this issue. He didn't mean to stalk, but took out his phone and said, meeting is fate, we can be regarded as acquaintances who have met several times, right? Why don't you leave a phone bug? I can tell at a glance that you must be my future big client. No problem. Doflamingo immediately took out the phone bug and said, the Gemming Army organization will make troubles in the future, and if they want to make troubles, how can they do it without food and guns? Isn't such a big organization full of potential customers? My Donquixote family is in this business. Soon, Doflamingo and Dorag exchanged the signal wave of the phone bug. Where are you going next? Drago asked. I don't have any particular destination. I'm quite free recently. It's not bad to go to Alabasta for a while. I heard that it is the oldest country of human beings. The desert environment is very different from the sea. It is also very rare. It is very suitable for travel? A Doflamingo said with a laugh. After a pause, he also asked, "What about you? Where are you going?" After a moment of silence, Dorag replied, "South Blue." "South Blue?" Doflamingo muttered. "Bartholomew Kuma?" Perhaps, at this time, Drago was already looking for his like-minded partners. But just when the two were about to part ways and go their separate ways, a news bird flew across the sky. As soon as Doflamingo waved, the news bird quickly flew towards him as if he knew that there was going to be a business. Seeing this, Dorag smiled and said, "Do you mind if I give you a copy of the newspaper?" "Isn't it? Are you going to rub it?" Doflamingo responded helplessly. "Anyway, you have to throw it away after reading it, why not throw it to me?" Drago said cheekily. Doflamingo didn't answer, quickly took out a coin and threw it to Newsbird, and then, Newsbird skillfully threw a newspaper to him. The moment he unfolded the newspaper, Doflamingo's pupils shrank for a moment, and then he said, "Oh, it seems that Alabasta's travel plan will be suspended, and it's time to watch the excitement." "What's the fuss?" Drago leaned forward and asked. Doflamingo did not avoid his meaning, and said in a deep voice, "Today's big news, Naval Headquarters Marineford announced that the One Piece Lord Gold Roger has been arrested and is currently being held in secret. The One Piece will be executed in the log town of East Blue, which is Roger's hometown. But the specific time has not yet been determined." Roger. Drago was stunned for a moment. He naturally knew Roger, after all, he was his father's old opponent. Especially since Roger is still called One Piece. It can be said that he is currently the most powerful figure in the sea, and the bounty is as high as 5.5648 billion Baileys, which shows his weight. Such a person was suddenly captured by Marine? I haven't heard of any large-scale battles that broke out before, and I haven't heard of any major battles happening anywhere. The rest of the news seemed to be boring. After reading Roger's report, Doflamingo directly stuffed the newspaper in his hand to Dorag, and said, "Although I don't know when the Marine is going to arrange the execution, but judging by the distance, it should be too late to go to Log Town now. I'm going to watch the excitement. Are you going?" Dorag was originally planning to go to South Blue for a visit, but now such a big news suddenly came out, and he was filled with emotions. Hearing Doflamingo's inquiry, he nodded instinctively and said, "Go. This kind of scene, if you don't go and see it, you will definitely regret it in the future." But after a short pause, Drago said again, "But I still have some things to deal with, so I won't go with you. Wait until I get to Log Town. Let's see fate." Doflamingo didn't force anything when he heard the words, and immediately agreed. Yes. Meanwhile, it wasn't just Dorag and Doflamingo who got the big news. It can be said that at this moment, with the spread of newsbirds, the news of the arrest of One Piece King Gold Roger caused a huge sensation all over the world. On the New World Moby Dick, Whitebeard Edward Newgate was looking at the newspaper in his hand. "Goal. Roger." Newgate murmured softly, then remembered that Roger had told him that his name was D, which was Gola da Roger. Why did the government of the world hide this D from him? Thinking of this, Newgate looked not far away, the young figure. Marshal Teacha. "Are you a D?" But he didn't think deeply about this question, and Newgate didn't really want to know the answer. At this moment, he was even more surprised that Roger was arrested. By Marine? But after thinking about it, I remembered what Roger said when he wrote his last reception after disbanding the pirates. Newgate felt again. This may not be the truth, this may be Roger's own choice. In the end, what kind of wonderful show are you going to perform? Roger. Newgate whispered softly, and then threw the newspaper aside. East Blue Log Town. After all, Whitebeard didn't intend to go to see the excitement. Because he is not sure, what is Marine's plan to execute Roger in public? Is it a demonstration, or is it another conspiracy against the pirate camp, using Roger as a bait? But in any case, as long as they don't join in the fun, it won't have much impact on the Whitebeard pirates. Also in the New World, the towering island of Melville. This place is called the Secret Realm, and few people know what's going on above Melview. And here is the base camp of Golden Lion Shaki, who roams the world, lion-roaring New World. "Boss. Calm down." In Melview's palace, many people exclaimed. But in the next second, a man with wild blonde hair and a rebellious figure flew out of the palace angrily. Then, a large group of pirates chased out from inside, as if they wanted to stop the figure, but they couldn't catch up after all. There is no doubt that the figure is the great piratea Golden Leona Shaki. Originally, he was very happy today, and he specially ordered a meal of his favorite meal, planning to sunbathe or something after eating. It turned out to be a good thing. Suddenly a newspaper was glued to his face, the one who had defeated his own forces in the naval battle of Edwall, the one who conquered the entire territory of the Grand Line, known as One Piece's Bastard Roger. Dot was caught by a weak marine. After seeing the news, Shaki was furious from the heart. Impossible, absolutely impossible. Shaki, who couldn't accept this fact in his heart, resolutely rushed to Naval Headquarters Marineford with furious emotions. He's going to ask those bastard Marines, what kind of despicable means did they use to catch Roger? He's going to ask those bastard Marines why they humiliated Roger so much and put him to death in the weakest sea, East Blue. He's going to find Roger, he's going to kill that damned bastard Roger with his own hands. The king of pirates, even if he wants to die, he should die in the hands of pirates. Deep Sea Prison Impel Down Impelton. This large prison known as the Bronze Wall and Iron Wall is actually located in the South Com Belt in the first half of the Grand Line. It is called Three Fortresses of Justice, together with Enies Lobby, Naval Headquarters and Marineford, the island that never sleeps. Between the three fortresses, there is a magnificent Gate of Justice. It only takes a few hours to take this fast swirling current to reach Imperton. The same goes for Impelton and Enies Lobby. Therefore, the three fortresses of justice are also considered by the world to be indestructible. No way, if you hit any place, the other two can quickly support, especially one of them is Naval Headquarters Marineford, which is the base camp of Marine. It is precisely because of this trinity of defense that the name of the three fortresses of justice resounds all over the world. In front of the harbor in Imperton, a very tall Magellan in the uniform of the deputy commissioner is standing here, with his younger brother Hannibal beside him. 0. I haven't seen Shiryu, and I don't know what's going on with this guy now. Before Magellan had to wait long, a huge warship arrived on the current. The turbulent current quickly subsided before reaching the port, and then the warship parked in the harbor very easily. The ship ladder was lowered, and then, a burly figure, wearing Marine's cloak of justice, gray-white suit, and Vice Admiral's epaulettes, stepped down from it. As soon as he got down, Magellan and Hannibal both stood up straight, looking very respectful. Because this person is none other than Marine hero Vice Admiral Garp. Oh, isn't that fellow Magellan Nozick here? Garp asked with a look of familiarity with this place. Vice Admiral Garp, good morning. Magellan greeted first, and then replied. Director Nozick was on vacation before, and is returning after receiving an emergency order, but the journey is long. So that's the case. There's no other way, you only take a few years off because of Pelton's vacation. Garp nodded understandingly. Because of the secrecy and various other reasons in Pelton, it is very difficult to take a normal vacation if you come to work anyway. It is usually released once every few years, but it can be released for almost a year at a time. At this time, Magellan probably hasn't eaten the poisonous fruit yet, so the people around don't need to wear gas masks or anything like that. Garp can see that he's been here a lot, and he looks quite familiar with Magellan. After chatting for a few words, Garp asked, is Roger in there? Yes. Magellan immediately responded. It was escorted last night, and it is currently being held on the 6th floor Eternal Hell. Well. Take me to have a look. Garp said immediately after hearing the words. Magellan also didn't mean to ask any more questions at all, just raised his hand, let the door open, and walked into the Imperton with Garp. After entering the elevator, soon, Garp and his party arrived at the 6th floor Eternal Hell. To the outside world, this layer does not exist. Only those vicious prisoners who should be obliterated in history are held here, and their existence is the heinous crime. After getting out of the elevator, Garp raised his hand and didn't say much, but Magellan said wittily, if you need anything, you can contact me anytime. Yeah. Garp nodded, then walked away. The environment of Eternal Hell is very ordinary. Unlike the prison cages on the upper floors with all kinds of strange environments and punishments, this place is very safe. But maybe because Imperton was built from the sea to the bottom, the 6th floor is located in the deep sea, so the environment is also very humid. Garp walked a few steps and found a lot of water. Unlike the prisons on the upper floors, there are not many prisoners held here, at least in this era. Garp walked past several empty cages, and then looked at the cell not far away. The light was very oppressive, but one could vaguely see a figure sitting in the cell. Even if it's vague, the general outline is enough for Garp to confirm. That is the nemesis he has been chasing for half his life, Roger. He walked over, and the movement of Garp also attracted the prisoners in the cage. Roger raised his head slowly, and when he saw the figure clearly, he grinned and said with a smile, I knew you would come. Katie. HMPH, I just want to see your downcast appearance. Garp snorted coldly. How? Not bad. Roger asked. So, Garp muttered. After finishing speaking, both of them fell silent. Garp came to see Roger, and it was only on a whim, or he didn't know why. Anyway, he just wanted to take a look. But if he was really asked to say something to Roger, he actually didn't know what to say to Roger. Standing outside the prison, Garp looked at Roger silently, and after a long time, he said, "Let's go. Look and read, since you don't know what to say, let's go." But the moment Garp turned around, Roger stood up from the prison and said, "Speaking of which, Garp." Garp paused when he was about to leave, and didn't speak, but looked at Roger, as if with a question. "My baby is about to be born. But unfortunately, I will never see that moment," Roger said with a smile. And he walked step by step to the prison fence. Garp froze for a moment, and then said, "Why are you telling me this, Marine?" After a pause, Garp added, "And that woman will definitely be executed, people related to you." "I know." Roger had no surprise on his face, and then said, "The government of the world will definitely investigate my whereabouts this year, and execute everyone related to me. But." Roger looked directly into Garp's eyes and said softly, "But the child is innocent, isn't it?" Huh. Garp unconsciously looked away, as if he didn't want to meet Roger's eyes. As Roger said, Garp never thought that there was any inherent nobleness in blood, just like those celestial dragons. Life, at the time of birth, should have been pure. But having said that, many things are not so simple. Maybe it was because of the humidity, or maybe it was because of other reasons. At this moment, the lights of eternal hell flickered and dimmed a little, and in an instant, Garp and Roger were plunged into darkness. But it was just a moment, almost without taking a breath, the lights turned on again. Garp, who was avoiding his gaze, looked at Roger again. And Roger also had a bright smile on his face and said, "We are old rivals who have fought countless times. Garp, in my heart, you are like my partner, you are worthy of trust. So, I hand them over to you, my wife and children, to you for protection." "What nonsense are you talking about?" Garp said with exasperation in his eyes. But Roger ignored him at all, and said to himself, "South Blue, Bartella Island, her name is Rouge. Portgas d. Rouge. Please. I'm Marine. I won't listen to you, and I won't help you." Garp yelled at Roger, and then didn't stay any longer, turned around and was about to leave. Roger didn't call to stop anything, and with a confident smile on his face, he just watched Garp's figure disappear step by step into the shadow of the corridor. Garp refused, but Roger knew that when Garp came to see him, many things were already doomed. The moment he opened his mouth, Garp couldn't get rid of them. As Roger said, they are opponents who have fought countless times. His trust in Garp is the same as his trust in his companions. In the port of Imperton, Magellan looked at Vice Admiral Garp, who looked solemn and seemed to be in a very unhappy mood, feeling a little strange. "What's the matter? Did you quarrel with the person down there?" Garp boarded the warship, then looked back at Magellan and said, "In the afternoon, someone from the headquarters will come to pick him up." "Have the results come out yet?" Magellan asked curiously. "Well, in a week," Garp said quietly. "A week later, in Logue Town in East Blue, Roger, the One Piece, will be publicly executed." The warship slowly left the port, took the current, and quickly headed for Marineford. Garp stood on the deck of the warship, with a cloudy expression on his face, and whispered softly, "Batlila. Portgas d. Rouge." At the same time, Redline, there is a figure passing through the sky above the Holy Land Marie Joyce. He has no intention of staying here, and goes straight to the direction where Naval Headquarters Marie Joyce is. As soon as Garp's warship arrived in Marineford, it felt as if the sky suddenly darkened. When he looked up, his face suddenly changed. What the hell? A huge warship is falling from the sky, heading towards the military port. Almost at the same moment, the sirens of Naval Headquarters sounded, which means that the enemy has invaded Marineford. Without thinking too much, Garp jumped up from the deck, his burly figure charged up in the air, and punched the falling warship in the sky with a fist. Fist blow. Garp growled. The violent and savage hockey exploded along Garp's fist, his huge chest seemed to cover the entire sky. In the next moment, under the eyes of everyone, the huge warship that was falling seemed to have touched some untouchable substance, and quickly disintegrated and disappeared in the air. In the end, the warship that could have dealt a heavy blow to the military port suddenly turned into countless powders in the air, and when the sea breeze blows, it floats with the wind. At the same time, on the huge Plaza of Justice in Marineford, Marines' corpses have accumulated into a small hill, and a bold and wild figure is standing at the top of the body. He holds 2 knives in his hand, and when the bitter sea breeze blows, his long golden hair will flutter with the wind. With a ferocious face and a cigar in his mouth, the blood spattered made his image even more brutal. This person was the one who killed Shaki the Golden Lion in Malinford with lightning speed. That guy is a man recognized by Lousy. How could he be caught by you weak Marines? Shaki stood on the pile of corpses, looking at the Marine soldiers who surrounded him but did not dare to act rashly, questioned angrily Rode. Angry eyes looked around, and then Shiki growled. If that guy is here, hand him over, and even if you want to kill him, Lousy should kill him. At this moment, the gathered Marines slowly made way for a road. Out came Sengoku, wearing a cloak of justice and Admiral epaulets. He looked at the Marines who had been beheaded by Shiki, and there was a flash of pain in his eyes, but soon, he said very calmly, Roger is the One Piece, and wants to talk about fighting with you. And he exits as a winner. Shiki. One Piece. Shiki said with anger in his eyes, what is that? If he had lent me his power earlier, we would have conquered the world already. At this moment, on the other side, Garp's figure also passed through the crowd. He looked at Shiki with dark eyes and said, his execution will be a week later, in Logue Town of East Blue. Roger's death will definitely frustrate many sees a thief's heart. Hearing this, Shiki was even angrier. Kill Roger in the weakest sea. You bastards, stop joking, that's the last insult to that bastard guy. No. Garp said in a deep voice, even though East Blue is called the weakest sea, it is a symbol of peace. Pirate Roger ending his legend there will greatly contribute to peace. Effect. So, I won't let you get in the way of the execution, Shiki. When Sengoku Admiral said this, he tore off the Admiral cloak on his shoulders. At this moment, it began to rain in the sky. Garp and Sengoku casually threw their cloaks into the water, their eyes and momentum locked onto Shiki's figure. In the past, it was not easy to catch you, a grimacing guy, but now it's good, you bumped in by yourself. This Naval Headquarters Marineford is the one you can come and leave when you say it. And the experienced Sengoku and Garp both found out that there seems to be something wrong with Shiki's mental state. Seems like he's lost some of his sanity because of this guy Roger. Therefore, as long as he finds a way to provoke him continuously, it is very likely that he will fight to the end here without thinking about the consequences. The best chance to capture this golden lion moment in decades seems to be here. Garp. Sengoku called softly. In the next moment, Sengoku exerted force from his feet, which was completely different from the calmness he had when facing Doflamingo in Cervantes. At this moment, Sengoku's force completely destroyed the ground under his feet and shattered into pieces. State of the web. It can be seen how terrifying the explosion of its power is. Almost at the same moment when the ground exploded, his burly figure appeared in front of Shiki. Vaguely, there seemed to be a golden light flashing from the back of his head, and then, Sengoku's fist was hung with a strong energy light. After all, Shiki is a top expert who has fought in the world for decades, and his reaction speed is still extremely fast. The moment Sengoku made a move, Shiki had already predicted his move, and raised the long knife in his hand, directly cutting at Sengoku on the fist. The impact of the shockwave and the slash erupted instantly, and the two were deadlocked and refused to give in. But it was only for a moment. Shiki took the initiative to dodge, his foot slipped, and his figure floated out very smoothly. It was also at this moment that his other long knife slashed to the side. Garp's figure suddenly appeared, hockey in his hand remained fixed, and he punched Shiki's long knife. The powerful explosive force made Shiki's palm hurt, but he is a lion fruit-capable person, and his figure floated backwards. The impact brought by Garp and Sengoku seemed to be blown by the wind, and disappeared. Obviously, this is an extremely clever unloading technique. It's Shiki's use of his powers. At the same time as the force was released, the ground suddenly surged, and suddenly a huge stone lion condensed out of the rock jumped out, biting Garp and Sengoku. The decisive battle between the three top masters broke out at this moment. East Blue, Logue Town. Since the news about One Piece Roger's execution here spread through the newspapers 2 months ago, Logue Town has gradually become lively. The guys who came from all over the world to watch the fun arrived one after another. Today, a new passenger is ushered in again in this port. Heavenly Yaksha a Donquixote a Doflamingo. It's really lively. Doflamingo couldn't help but sighed as he looked at the crowded port. After all, the day after tomorrow is the day of Roger's execution. Almost everyone who should come has come, Beckman said. The burly Eau Rouge approached Doflamingo and the others and asked, "What Roger? Does it have a lot of influence on your side?" "Of course, and there will be bigger ones in the future." Doflamingo raised his eyebrows. At the same time as the voice fell, he seemed to hear someone arguing behind him. "I told you to come earlier. It's all right now. With so many people, I'm afraid we won't even be able to book a hotel, you red-haired bastard." If you don't have a hotel to sleep in, then sleep on a boat, we are pirates." "It's not a pirate ship at all, it's just a small sampan. It doesn't even have a cabin. It will be very cold at night. What if I catch a cold?" Doflamingo looked along the sound of the quarrel, and sure enough, on the edge of the pier, two brats were arguing. A red-haired kid in a straw hat, and an Oda guy with a big red nose. Apparently, it's One Piece Roger's apprentice crew, Shanks and Buggy. Speaking of it, Shanks and Buggy are obviously only 2 years younger than Doflamingo, but at this moment, it seems that the maturity is really different. Doflamingo may be really precocious, and now he looks like he is in his mid-20s. As for Buggy and Shanks, there are still immature marks on their bodies. Foo-fur-fur-fur-fur. Doflamingo looked at the two people who were arguing, and laughed involuntarily. Although he looked a little interested, Doflamingo had no intention of getting to know the two of them. Beckman followed Doflamingo's gaze, and then asked a little puzzled, "What's wrong?" Doflamingo looked at Shanks, then at Beckman, finally shook his head and said, "It's nothing, those two guys. If I remember correctly, they should be apprentice crew members of the Roger Pirates. I didn't expect to appear here." Roger Pirates. Beckman looked at Shanks and Buggy with interest, and then asked, "Why do you feel that they are a little out of tune?" "It should be said that the Roger Pirates are out of tune." Doflamingo responded with a smile, then paid no attention to anything, and walked towards the outside of the port. Not just Shanks and Buggy. At this time, many heroes of the next 20 years have gathered on the island. In the largest tavern in Logetown, a young swordsman with eyes like falcons is sitting on the back of his chair drinking wine, and beside him is a huge black knife. Dracule Mahawk. On the square, the gigantic gecko Moria looked at the execution platform that had just been built, with an expectant smile on the corner of his mouth. On the lighthouse at the port, Crocodile, with his back hair combed and a cigar in his mouth, was also looking at the entire Logetown Valley from a distance. From time to time, wisps of yellow sand can be seen, scattered from his body, swept away by the sea wind without a trace. I don't know if there is any special fate. When Crocodile swept across the pier, he happened to see the very tall Doflamingo and his party, and his self-light lingered on Doflamingo for a moment. Also at this moment, as if sensing something, Doflamingo turned his head and looked behind him. Then, his eyes met Crocodile's. At this moment, a newsbird flew by. Crocodile looked back at Doflamingo, threw out a coin, and exchanged for a newspaper. The moment Crocodile opened the newspaper, Crocodile's eyes suddenly changed. The great piratea, Golden Leona, Shiki was arrested. Is the current Marine so brave? Capture Roger first, then Shiki. Should Whitebeard be captured next? East Blue, a sea area. On a transport ship, the owner of the ship was climbing up and down with a phone bug in his hand, frantically looking for a signal. What's going on? Why is there no signal? My phone bug won't die, right? The boat owner asked in surprise. It's not just him. In fact, the ships near this sea area have no signal at this time. The reason is also very simple, because there is an entire marine fleet passing by here. Perhaps to keep the itinerary secret, the warship released a large-scale shielding signal. On the deck of this warship, Sengoku Admiral with a bandage on his body is sitting on a small horse. Opposite him is Vice Admiral Garp. Garp was not much better. His stomach was also wrapped in a bandage, and he could still see the bloodline oozing faintly. It's not just Sengoku with Garp. Chief Suru, Sakazuki, Kuzan, Paluzolino and others are all here. Although the signal was blocked, as a high-level marine, the phone bug placed in front of Sengoku was still able to continue the call under this encryption. A medical soldier stepped forward and helped Sengoku change some bandages. After a little observation, you can find that many of Sengoku's injuries have healed up. In contrast, Garp's wound is still bleeding. After all, it is worthy of Zone's Phantom Beast ability user, and the recovery speed is really strong. Yes, it is expected to arrive in Logetown tomorrow. Well, I haven't encountered any problems so far. Sengoku Admiral said to the phone bug placed not far away. Zephyr Admiral's voice also came from the phone bug. Based on current observations, the Whitebeard pirates haven't moved at all, and the villains in New World haven't seen anything unusual. Zephyr said softly. It's better if there are no abnormalities. It's better not to hinder our execution. Sengoku Admiral said calmly. In fact, until now, those big pirates are not sure about Marine's situation. How did Roger get caught? No one has figured this out until now. Marine made the execution so above board. Is he using Roger to fish? These are already very confusing, but the explosive news this morning made the pirates in New World afraid to act rashly. The pirate king of New World, a Golden Leona Shiki, was captured by Marine for no reason. There are no specific details on the news. All I know is that Marine's Admiral Sengoku teamed up with the hero Garp to send Shiki to Impertin prison. This seems very strange. How long has it been since One Piece King Roger and One Piece Overlord Shiki have been arrested one after another? Isn't Marine a little weak now? Why are you still so cruel? Garp was eating senbei, and after taking a sip of tea, he suddenly asked, by the way, Zephyr. What is it? Zephyr responded. Now that bastard Shiki and Roger have been dealt with by us, the previous plan of 7 warlords of the sea. What do those guys on Marie Joy's say? Has Brother Kong ever had a relationship? Garp asked curiously. The intention of the 7 warlords of the sea plan was created by Marie Joyce, who felt that Marine was relatively weak now, in order to strengthen the control over the sea. As a result, the letter of intent has just been sent to Marine, and the One Piece Roger has been arrested before we get any feedback. That alone is enough to give Marine the confidence to tell Marie Joyce that we don't need this kind of bullshit plan to buy time. But who knows how double happiness can come? Shiki, a cunning guy, did not know what medicine he took wrongly, but he also crashed into Marineford, and was suppressed by Garp and Sengoku jointly. Now, 2 of New World's 3 iconic pirates, Roger, Shiki, and Newgate, have been dealt with. For the pirate camp, this is definitely a kind of crushing momentum, and it also makes many pirates. The fear of Marine is getting deeper and deeper. Now, Marine still has a complete set of plans. After Roger's execution, he will use Roger's death to make a big fuss and further oppress the living space of pirates. Once this wave can be contained, Marine may really be able to continue its glory for another 20 years. In this case, what 7 warlords of the sea plan is needed? Upon hearing Garp's inquiry, Zephyr smiled and said, "The Marshal has already fed back the letter of intent to Marie Joyce, clearly expressing our Marine's objection intention, let alone. Maybe because of our successive big harvests, Marie Joyce also took great pride in rejecting the letter of intent for the 7 warlords of the sea project." Ah. Garp laughed and said, "That's how it should be, that's how it should be, those guys on Marie Joyce don't do anything." In fact, the 7 warlords of the sea plan was full of twists and turns. At first Marie Joyce was very excited, thinking that this plan could be used. As a result, Marine quickly took care of Roger and Shiki, proving his strong influence. Seeing that Marine is still so brave, and can still hold the field at critical moments, the people on Marie Joyce don't have to come up with 7 warlords of the sea. So when Marine expressed his objections, the upper management didn't force anything through this time, but followed Marine's wishes and dropped the letter of intent. At the same time, Marie Joyce is still looking forward to it. After Roger's execution, Marine can continue to increase its influence on the sea and control the situation in accordance with the pace, further suppress the living space of pirates, and strive to stabilize the sea for a while. Time. To be honest, when we got here, everything was normal. But after Roger's nonsense of "go find it," I put everything there, spread to the whole world through live broadcast and newspapers, the situation that was originally in the hands of the world government and Marine collapsed instantly. In the plan, not only did the goal of severely reducing the momentum of the pirate camp not be achieved, but it also detonated the era of great pirates. Pirates from all over the world frantically poured into this sea, and it didn't take long to stir up the sea into a miasma, which made Marine physically and mentally exhausted. This unexpected explosion of pirates really caught Marine by surprise. When he came back to his senses, the situation was out of control. Under such circumstances, the 7 warlords of the sea plan that had just been rejected was once again proposed by the world government. This time, Marine didn't have enough clout to push Marie Joyce to cancel the plan. Then, just like in the original story, the 7 warlords of the sea plan fell into place. The so-called 3 major forces began to gradually appear on the sea. But let alone, with the continuous development of the 7 warlords of the sea, before the emergence of the extremely evil generation, the situation on the sea surface was indeed stabilizing. Marine also got enough time to develop because of this. So in terms of results, the establishment of 7 warlords of the sea was quite successful for the world government. They sacrificed part of their interests, such as Dressrosa, Alabasta, etc., were severely harmed by the 7 warlords of the sea, but they won enough time to make Marine enter a new heyday, and at the same time, 7 warlords of the sea using the warlords of the sea as a blueprint, they created top war weapons like Seraphim. After 7 warlords of the sea was used up, at a world summit, the 20-year cooperation was terminated. It's just beautiful. Hanging up the phone bug, Sengoku also laughed in a rare way. It's really lucky recently, it seems that the sea still favors us Marine. Garp laughed and said, "We represent justice, of course Yinhai favored us." After joking with everyone, Garp suddenly patted the bleeding wound on his belly and said, "I'm going to take a vacation after Roger's execution is over." Again. Sengoku frowned. "Hey, Sengoku, don't pretend to be innocent, I was still here last time I was on vacation." Garp looked at Shizan sitting next to him as if he couldn't remember. Kuzan was still very smart, and immediately answered, "Last time." "Ah yes, the last time I was on vacation was the last time." "Bah. Kuzan, what are you talking about?" Garp half-spoken, reacting, and cursed. The Marines on the deck were also amused by the joy, and even Sakazuki, who had been keeping a cold face, raised his mouth slightly. It can be seen that the recent situation has made Sakazuki very happy. It's been a long time anyway. Garp slapped his thigh and said, I'm going to take an annual leave. As soon as he heard that it was annual leave, Admiral Sengoku nodded calmly. Okay then. Anyway, judging by the qualification of Vice Admiral, the annual leave is only over 1 month, so there is no big problem. And he didn't know that the annual leave in Garp's Hob Meatmouth is a F***King annual leave. What are you going to do on vacation? Chief Staff Officer Suru asked slightly curiously. Garp rubbed his chin, and said with an excuse, I'll go to South Blue to have a look. Also, I heard that Duo Lage seems to have a girlfriend, I'm also very curious. Hearing South Blue, Sengoku was a little skeptical at first, but soon, he was attracted by the fact that Drago had a partner, and asked very curiously, is it true? I don't know if it's true or not, so I'm going to have a look, Garp said carelessly. In the Logue Town Tavern, Doflamingo was flipping through a newspaper in his hand. Another one went in. Doflamingo sighed. Beckman on the side poured him a glass of wine, and then said, Before you said that the next 20 years would be the golden age of pirates, but now I see that's not the case. One Piece King Roger was arrested. This is about to be executed. The pirate overlord Golden Lion has also been captured, and is now locked up in Imperton. If there is no accident, the next step is Whitebeard. To become a pirate at this time, is it really suitable? Doflamingo took the drink, took a sip and said, If everything goes according to Marine's wishes, this sea should have been pacified long ago, just wait and see. As soon as Doflamingo's voice fell, he felt a line of sight fall on him, with a sharp look. He thought it was that sullen guy crocodile who was chasing after him again, so he turned his head and looked at the place where his sight came from. Then, he was a little surprised. He didn't pay attention to the guy sitting in the corner when he entered the door, wasn't he Mahawk? That's right, Mahawk, who was sitting in the corner at this time, was looking at Doflamingo with his hawk-like gaze that was extremely oppressive. Well, the heartbeat in his waist. Seemingly noticing Doflamingo's reaction, Mahawk quickly withdrew his attention from Doflamingo's waist, raised his head and moved his gaze upwards, confronting Doflamingo. The young Mahawk doesn't wear any hat, but he still has a very outstanding temperament on his body, like a young master of a noble family that has been passed down for many years. He was wearing a floral shirt with a lapel collar, but it didn't look fancy. Around his neck was a small gold chain and a pendant that looked like a cross. With Doflamingo watching, Mahawk slowly stood up from the corner. His height is also different from ordinary people, but compared with Doflamingo, it is still a bit short, and it should not be as tall as 3 meters. The body is not burly, but the temperament is very sharp. Standing there, it is like a sharp knife out of its sheath. Soon, Mahawk was in front of Doflamingo. What's the matter? Doflamingo tilted his neck slightly and raised his eyebrows. Heavenly Yaksha Donquixote a Doflamingo. A bounty of 196 million Baileys is offered, right? Mahawk asked. His tone was very cold, as if Doflamingo's bounty of nearly 200 million Baileys did not put any pressure on him. Doflamingo smiled and said, It's me. You don't mean to say that you are a pirate hunter, so you fell in love with my head and want to exchange it for gold? No, I'm not a pirate hunter. Mahawk shook his head seriously. Then who are you? Doflamingo asked again. My name is Dracule Mahawk, and I am a swordsman, Mahawk said. Then, without waiting for Doflamingo to speak, Mahawk continued. According to the information released by Marine, you should not be a swordsman, right? Doflamingo looked at Zindu at his waist and said, Say what you have to say. 9th of the 12 works of the greatest great property, the Zindu, known as the fiercest demon sword, isn't it? Mi Huoshu looked at Dover Mingshu's waist again and asked. Doflamingo nodded and said, That's right. It's it, what's wrong? If you are not a swordsman, I suggest you not to choose the demon sword when choosing accessories. Mahawk looked into Doflamingo's eyes and said, Sell it? As a swordsman, Mahawk naturally has a strong interest in famous knives. This interest did not gradually dissipate until he became the world's #1 swordsman. Now, when he sees Doflamingo, who is not a swordsman, with a most powerful weapon hanging on his body, can he not be moved? This guy Mahawk belongs to the kind of existence who can do whatever he wants. He is a pirate, but in fact he is not a pirate in the true sense. He does not like looting towns, killing people and setting fires. In the course of becoming famous as Kendo, and the world's #1 swordsman, because of his unscrupulous character, too many tragedies were caused. For example, in a bustling town, he suddenly drew his sword to challenge the swordsman, and finally leading to the destruction of towns and such. There are too many messy things, and I finally turned myself into a pirate. To be honest, if it weren't for Roger's execution here soon, and if it weren't for Doflamingo's nearly 200 million Bailey bounty, it would still be useful. Mahawk is not here to talk to him nicely, that is to grab the knife directly. Doflamingo felt a little funny when he heard what Mahawk said, and couldn't help waving his hands and said, "Sorry, this knife is not for sale." "Why?" "If it's just for decoration, I can find you more gorgeous," Mahawk asked immediately. His character, to be honest, is too straightforward. In the information given by Marine, I may not be a swordsman, but in fact, I have completed the job change not long ago, and now I am on the road to becoming a swordsman. So this knife as my saber is very important, and I cannot cut the wheat for you, Doflamingo patiently explained. After hearing this, Mahawk had a look of understanding in his eyes and said, "So that's it. I'm sorry, I misunderstood." But after he finished speaking, he looked Doflamingo up and down, hesitated for a moment, and said, "But with all due respect, you don't seem to have the temperament of a swordsman." "Doflamingo, what you said involves a personal attack." His face twitched for a moment, and Doflamingo asked, "What kind of temperament is called the temperament of a swordsman?" After hearing this question, Mahawk didn't even hesitate, and said directly, "The eyes are clear, the mind is focused, and we move forward bravely." Doflamingo froze for a moment, then asked, "What do you think I am?" "Deep scheming." Mahawk answered the question immediately, and then added, "If you want to climb to the top of the swordsman, those with deep scheming will have no chance." His serious tone, what he said, can be summed up as, "Are you inconsistent with the three characters?" Doflamingo still hasn't figured out if Mahawk is really honest, or is he mocking him. Beckman on the side couldn't help laughing out loud. "Ha ha 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 ha. A unknown currency, sorry. Sorry, I didn't mean it. To be honest, we navigators have been professionally trained and generally don't laugh unless we can't help it, ha 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 ha." This guy Beckman didn't know it was just now what words hit his boring smile. At this time, they had already started to hold their stomachs, slap the table and laughed. Doflamingo is so embarrassing for him. Doflamingo took a deep breath, then looked at Mahawk and said, "Before deciding how to treat you next, I want to ask, are you here to provoke me because you don't like me?" Mahawk looked at Doflamingo with clear eyes, frowned with some doubts and said, "Why do you ask that? I have no prejudice against you, I'm just very interested in Zindu, that's all." Judging by Mahawk's expression, he shouldn't be kidding himself, combined with his character traits shown in the original story. No, he wasn't so straightforward in the original story, right? There seems to be a little bit, like his life with Perona, but it's not that far, is it? But after thinking about it, Mahawk was already the #1 swordsman in the world at that time, and he had experienced many ups and downs, and some changes are normal. At this time, Mahawk was about the same age as himself, and he was still young. A gifted kendo genius may have devoted all his life to kendo. He is a little strange, but it's not incomprehensible. Thinking of this, Doflamingo sighed slightly. "Do you have any friends?" "Does the knife count?" Mahawk responded naturally. Well, sure enough, he has no friends, too. With his character and what he said, it would be strange to have friends. Doflamingo raised his hand to pat Mahawk's shoulder. In fact, the moment he raised his hand, Mahawk had already sensed his movement trajectory and hesitated for a moment, but he did not dodge after all. Doflamingo patted Mahawk on the shoulder, and said earnestly, "Mahawk, to be honest, if you continue like this, I'm afraid you'll have to hold that knife for the rest of your life." Thinking about this guy, in the original story, he seemed to be living alone on an isolated island with a group of monkeys. Good guy. Doflamingo looked at Mahawk even more strangely. Aristocratic temperament, isolated island, living alone in a castle. You are more like a vampire than me. Mahawk froze for a moment, then said, "Thank you, what's wrong with that?" "Yes, what happened to my life with Dao? I am a swordsman." Doflamingo didn't say anything more about this matter, and continued. "If you are only interested in famous knives, I still have a big business at home, one of the 21 craftsmen. If you are interested, you can come and find it. It's okay for me to send you off when the time comes. Eh?" Having said that, Beckman raised his glass and asked, "Would you like to sit down and have a drink together?" Mahawk looked at Beckman, then at Doflamingo, finally set his eyes on the wine glass on the table, nodded and said, "All right." Although he didn't buy Zindu, Mahawk inexplicably felt that his mood seemed to be much happier at this time. The weather in Logue Town today is very sunny, and it can even be said to be hot. The sun makes people feel a little dry. But even under the scorching sun, the transparent and wide square was still crowded with people from all over the world. They surrounded the tall execution platform at the front of the square. There are also a large number of Marines around, maintaining order. On the roof in the distance, there were many reporters lying on their stomachs, and the live broadcast equipment was also turned on, ready to broadcast the live situation to the whole world at any time. Obviously, today is the big day, One Piece Gold D. Rogers Execution Day. Among the crowd, Doflamingo was holding a parasol in his hand, looking at the sunshine outside with some disgust in his eyes from time to time, and couldn't help complaining. "You don't know how much I respect you when I see you off under the scorching sun, Roger. For a vampire like him, this is considered the highest standard, right? Are you allergic to sunlight, or afraid of heat?" Doflamingo asked curiously with Mihawk standing beside him. "No, it's just that because of my fruit ability, I hate sunlight. If I had to say it, I'm actually a nocturnal creature," Doflamingo explained calmly. "This is not a weakness, he just hates the sun, not that he can't coexist with the sun. It's like some people hate eating coriander, but they can't eat it." So Doflamingo told Mihawk calmly. "I see." Mihawk nodded and said, "Actually, I wanted to ask just now. Do you know that guy?" "Who?" Doflamingo followed Mihawk's gaze, a little curious. "Sand crocodile, like you, is also a pirate," Mihawk said. Sure enough, following Mihawk's line of sight, he could see that among the crowd not far away, there was also a guy who stood out from the crowd because of his height. What makes Doflamingo very envious is that the guy may not be afraid of heat, because it is such a hot day and the sun is so big. The guy combs his hair back, bites a cigar, wears a heavy suit, and specially puts on wearing a fur coat. Although it is quite imposing, compared with the guys in short sleeves around, it is simply outrageous. On the other hand, Doflamingo, he didn't wear any suit today, especially a heat-absorbing black suit. His upper body was just a white shirt close to his neck. The buttons were all open and unbuttoned near the neckline. Strong chest muscles, combined with his tough and handsome face, are full of charm. The lower body is just a pair of ordinary trousers, with a pair of ordinary shoes. But it is such a simple collocation, not to mention, Doflamingo can also be controlled. When Doflamingo looked over, Crocodile was also looking at him, and their eyes met in the air again. Can vaguely feel that Crocodile seems to be very unhappy with himself? Doflamingo recalled a bit. Seriously, he should have met this sand crocodile for the first time in Logue Town, right? Didn't he have anything to provoke him before? Why is this bastard looking at me with that provocative look? Doflamingo himself is not a good guy to get along with. Crocodile's attitude is so unfriendly. Doflamingo will not be used to him. The corners of his mouth slightly curled up. A mocking smile hung on his face. He snorted softly, and sneered at Crocodile after a few clicks. Doflamingo withdrew his gaze and stopped looking at him. On the other side, Crocodile, who was ridiculed by Doflamingo, twitched his face, and the unfriendly eyes of Doflamingo became more gloomy. That's right. Doflamingo didn't feel wrong. Crocodile did have a natural hostility towards him. And he didn't remember wrongly. This Logue Town was indeed the first time he saw Crocodile, and he had never seen Crocodile the rest of the time, let alone provoked him. The reason why he made Crocodile so unhappy and naturally hostile was actually only one reason. That is, his bounty far exceeds that of Crocodile. Heavenly Yaksha a Don Quixote a Doflamingo. The reward is 196 million Baileys. Sand Crocodile a Crocodile, bounty 52 million Bailey. Good guy. Crocodile has gained fame in the new world and is known as the new generation leader. The bounty is not as high as that of Doflamingo. This makes Crocodile, who has always been proud, think of Doflamingo. How is it not pleasing to the eye? Why? Why did I make my debut earlier? I made more big things in New World. I have richer qualifications as a pirate, and my strength is stronger, but this Doflamingo has not even appeared in North Blue, and the island bounty can ride on my head. Why? The more he thought about it, the more angry he got, and with Doflamingo's taunting appearance just now, Crocodile had already decided in his heart that after the execution was over, he would kill Doflamingo, the damn bastard, in this Logue Town. I don't have much communication with him. I don't know what medicine he took wrongly. Doflamingo turned around and responded to Mihawk very flatly. After a moment of silence, Mihawk said, "Be careful." "Oh." Doflamingo grinned and said with a smile, "Are you caring about me, Mihawk?" "I'm afraid that after you die, you won't be able to see that gun again," Mihawk said arrogantly. Fufurofurfurfurofurfur. Doflamingo smiled evilly and said, "Don't worry, I'm very strong, just a pirate at 50-50. I can even hammer Sakazuki in the sky. Am I still afraid of a crocodile?" "What does pirate 50% mean?" Mihawk asked with some doubts. "That is to say, that guy can play two hands with anyone, but he may not win," Doflamingo said with a smile. "The crocodile guy is really an outrageous guy with amazing strength. The lower limit can be blocked. He just went to sea, and Wong Luffy, who had 2 drops of blood on his hand, was sent to Impelton to be imprisoned. Cap is able to play fiercely against Whitebeard, Bullet, Mihawk, Sakazuki and others without falling behind. Because he can fight with anyone, he is dubbed Pirate 50-50. While Doflamingo and Mihawk were chatting about these topics, Doflamingo suddenly seemed to notice something, and suddenly looked up at the clock tower in the distance. On the bell tower, there was already a figure standing at this moment. That figure was wearing a windbreaker, hiding itself in the shadows. But he also seemed to have noticed Doflamingo's gaze, and immediately nodded to Doflamingo as a greeting. Obviously, that guy is Drago who likes to hide his head and show his tail. It's not a wanted criminal now, why are you making yourself so mysterious? Doflamingo complained, but he didn't care about anything, so he turned his head and ignored it. Moria, Crocodile, Shanks, Buggy, Mihawk, Dorag, and more are almost there. I don't know whether it's the changing weather or the sad sea, but Doflamingo suddenly found that the scorching sun seemed to have changed, and there seemed to be dark clouds condensing on the skyline. And just as Doflamingo was thinking about these irrelevant trifles, the crowd in the distance suddenly became commotion. Then, just below the execution platform, a large group of marine bosses appeared. Walking in the front was Admiral of Headquarters Sengoku, wearing a blue suit and a cloak of justice, with a round head and hairstyle, with a braided beard. Following behind Sengoku is the hero A Garp and the great advisor A Suru. Then there are Kuzan, Sakazuki and Paluzolino. In the end, there are a group of marine generals, and Doflamingo doesn't recognize any of them anyway. But just looking at the lineup that Marine played, it can be said that Marineford's elite are all here. In this case, Whitebeard has to consider the situation when he comes. Anyway, they have completely suppressed the current Logue town, so there is no problem at all. Standing under the execution platform, Sengoku Admiral also looked around the square, wanting to see if there were any troublesome guys. Such a scan, let alone, there is really, but it is only a little troublesome. Until he saw Doflamingo in the crowd, holding an umbrella. Recalling the events of North Blue, Sengoku's eyes darkened slightly. At this time, Doflamingo also looked at Sengoku. He was holding an umbrella, with a gentle smile on his face, and nodded to Sengoku from a distance, saying hello. Good guy, I don't know, but I thought the two of them were some kind of friends that I haven't seen for a long time. And Sengoku was also disgusted by Doflamingo's behavior, so he snorted coldly and ignored him. According to Marijoy's hint, it is not convenient for Marine to do anything to this bastard Doflamingo for the time being, especially now that Marijoy's and Marine are in a honeymoon period. Of course, the most important point is that Sengoku does not want to place the battlefield with a ruthless person like Doflamingo on a densely populated island like Logue Town. Otherwise, even if Doflamingo can be suppressed, the people on this island will definitely die. What's wrong? Sengoku? Garp asked curiously when he heard Sengoku snort. On the side, General Staff Suru said, he saw his old North Blue enemy. North Blue's old enemy. Garp was stunned for a moment, and then he said loudly, Doflamingo? Speaking of which, in the original story, among the Marines, Lang Ming's old opponent is not Sengoku, but Suru's chief staff officer. It's just the king. It seems that some deviations have occurred. Sengoku obviously didn't want to talk about these topics, took out a pocket watch from his pocket, looked down at the time and said, it's about to start. Sure enough, as soon as his words fell, the crowd on the other side of the square also became commotion. Doflamingo looked back, relying on his height advantage, his eyes passed through the dense crowd, and at the end of the square, he saw the manacled figure. One Piece Gola da Roger. The beard is messy, and the hair is a bit thick, obviously it hasn't been taken care of for a while. He was wearing his usual wine red captain's coat. It seems that in the end, Roger still positioned himself as a pirate captain. With shackles on his wrists and a chain ball on his feet, Roger walked on the road to the execution platform. Behind him, there were two executioners holding torture knives. The original square was noisy, but with the appearance of Roger, the noise quickly quieted down. It seems that everyone really wants to see what kind of demeanor this One Piece, who has everything in the world, is like. He's laughing. Mihawk looked at Roger passing by, with a look of surprise in his eyes. Yes, Roger walked on the death road to the execution platform, and he didn't show the slightest timidity. On the contrary, he seemed to be looking forward to it, with a smile on the corner of his mouth. Hammer balls were hung on his feet, and shackles were placed on his wrists, but he still walked on this road with his head held high and his chest high, never lowering his proud head. That's not a prisoner. Beckman looked at this scene, whispered something softly, and then frowned, as if thinking about how to describe Roger. That's right, he was never a prisoner. Doflamingo nodded in agreement. Look, does he look like he is going to the execution platform? Having said that, Doflamingo paused, and said with a smile, he is ascending his throne, which belongs to the pirate's throne. When Doflamingo's voice fell, Beckman's eyes lit up and said, yes, that's the feeling. At this moment, Roger seems not to die, but to ascend his throne. Soon, Roger reached the bottom of the execution platform, where the marine bosses were standing. Sengoku's eyes swept over Roger, but he didn't speak after all. Roger didn't look at Sengoku at all. His eyes were on Garp's body, and the smile on the corner of his mouth became more intense. Although Garp didn't promise anything, and didn't promise anything. But at this time, when Roger saw Garp again, he was still so confident. He trusted Garp as if he lived with his own companion. The moment he passed by, Roger's footsteps paused slightly, and then he said softly, farewell, Garp. He didn't hide anything from his voice. Sengoku and others at the side could hear it, but no one was surprised. Because everyone knows that Roger and Garp really have a deep friendship. After Garp heard the farewell, he didn't respond, but he closed his eyes reluctantly. In a daze, he seemed to recall something from a long time ago. There was one time. He fought side by side with Roger, and there was only one time. Obviously the positions and identities of the two sides are completely hostile, but at the moment of joining forces, both of them trust their backs to each other. Maybe it was from then on that this bad relationship was formed? The hammer dragged on the steps of the execution platform, and Roger slowly climbed onto the throne that belonged to him alone. In fact, the execution platform in Logue Town is not particularly tall. In the future, the treatment his son will enjoy is much better than him, and that is the real height. So in no time, Roger was on top. He stood on the top, glanced down, and immediately found two little ghosts supporting each other with sad and painful expressions on their faces. It's Shanks and Buggy. Roger was very relieved in his heart, but he knew that he couldn't show any strangeness. Then, he sat cross-legged on the execution platform. Without paying too much attention to those people who came to watch his execution in the square, Roger followed the end of the road to the sea in the distance. Vaguely, he seemed to be on the other side of the sea and saw his companions, and vaguely, he seemed to see Rouge standing on the high place of Batlila Harbor. Vaguely, he seems to have seen the tide of the times rolling towards him. Doflamingo also looked away from Roger at this time, and looked at the clock tower not far away. It was 1 minute away and Roger's execution time was noon. When the bell of noon strikes, the king of pirates will be executed. It was also at the same moment when Doflamingo looked at the clock tower. Finally, I don't know if it was arranged by Roger or if it was really such a coincidence. An ordinary citizen with a passerby face suddenly broke the silence in the square, shouting and questioning. Hey, Roger. If you are the One Piece, you must have a lot of treasures, right? Where did you hide those treasures? Up? Originally sitting cross-legged on this execution platform, waiting for the last minute of his life to pass, Roger grinned, showing a bright smile, and said with a big smile, ah ha 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 ha. Do you want my treasure? If you want, I will give you all. Go find it, I put everything there. In fact, when the passerby asked such a sentence, Admiral Sengoku, who was still an old god, suddenly changed his face and shouted, execution, don't let him talk. But after all, it was still a step too late. Roger has passed his death declaration to the whole world freely. The sharp torture knife fell, one left and one right, piercing Roger's chest from behind, and bright red blood flowed out. At this moment, Roger felt his vitality dissipating rapidly. But at the same time, he also saw the rolling tide of the times smash the last dam on the sea. A new era has come. Roger gave a final laugh, and then fell silent. In the next second, the whole square cheered, but these cheers were not because the heinous pirate was executed, but because the treasure belonging to the One Piece was placed on the sea. At this moment, Sengoku, who was standing under the execution platform, looked pale, and there was a rare look of swearing in his eyes. Obviously everything is under Marine's control, but in the end, Roger, the damned bastard, made a move. Whether it's a live broadcast or a public execution, the government of the world has used a lot of resources to execute Roger's plan to deter pirates, but in the end, they made a wedding dress for him instead. At this moment, Sengoku already understood that from the moment Roger turned himself in, Marine had fallen into this bastard's trap. The sea is going to be messed up. As if matching Marine's mood, the originally clear sky was completely covered by dark clouds, and heavy rain fell instantly. Foo-fur-fur-fur-fur. Doflamingo stood on the square holding an umbrella, looked at the excited and cheering crowd, and couldn't help laughing. At this moment, a live phone bug seemed to capture him. And Doflamingo, after noticing this, said with an evil smile on his face, go find it, the great secret treasure that belongs to One Piece. belongs to the new era of pirates, already. The moment Doflamingo's voice fell, a yellow sand slash suddenly struck behind him, directly cutting some passers-by beside Doflamingo into two pieces. And Doflamingo's reaction speed is also very fast, the pace of his feet did not move, and the heart crossing hanging from his waist has already been unsheathed. A cold light flashed, and the lingering slash split the yellow sand in two. You were really brave to fight with me in this weather, Crocodile. Doflamingo looked at the rain-drenched figure in front of him and said in a low voice. Crocodile's eyes were still unruly, with a cigar in the corner of his mouth. He said disdainfully, "Don't think too highly of yourself, we are not in the same class." As soon as the words fell, a large amount of yellow sand exploded from Crocodile's feet, and then the whole person rushed towards Doflamingo, as if to cover him with yellow sand and drown him. It was also at this moment that the blood beads floating behind Doflamingo exploded in an instant, and in an instant, surging blood roared like a sea of blood. Almost at the same moment, several figures on the square seemed to have a premonition of danger, disappeared here and flew up the tall building. And some ordinary people were unlucky, almost in the blink of an eye, they were swept in by yellow sand and blood, and died in a moment. The yellow sand and blood collided and exploded, and two figures exploded out of it. One of them was Crocodile, and the golden hook on his arm was resisting Doflamingo's heart crossing. And Crocodile's expression is indeed a bit dark. At first he only thought that Doflamingo was a guy who didn't deserve his name, and he didn't believe it when he fought with Marine Admiral for 6 days. As a result of this fight, he found that Doflamingo brought him great pressure. At this time, the weather was raining again, which restricted his ability even more. To be honest, he regretted it a little bit. Looking at the golden hook on Crocodile's arm, Doflamingo said coldly, "It seems that the pain of breaking your arm in New World hasn't made you realize that if you have nothing to do, don't provoke people you can't afford." "Shut up," Crocodile said with annoyance in his eyes. "Isn't that what you said in person?" At the moment when the two were stalemate, a roar came. "You bastards, what do you think this is a place for?" Before Doflamingo could react, he saw two figures soaring into the sky from the corner of his eye, and they were coming towards him and Crocodile. One of them is Admiral Sengoku, and the other is the hero Garp. At this moment, Doflamingo and Crocodile had an extremely tacit understanding. The two released their strength at the same time, borrowing each other's strength to retreat backwards. But after all, it was a step too late, it was Crocodile. Doflamingo watched as Sengoku exploded in his hand and sent out an extremely strong shockwave, which directly enveloped Crocodile's whole body, and then Crocodile seemed to want to become elemental, but he was a step too late, and a mouthful of old blood came, and then his body instantly shattered into countless yellow sands, all of which were rammed into deep pits on the ground by Sengoku's palm. Kill in one hit. Before Doflamingo could feel refreshed, a terrifying hockey momentum had already enveloped Doflamingo. Hey, hey, hey. Doflamingo slashed out the heart in Doflamingo's hand, but was shattered by the iron fist wrapped around Hockey in an instant. Then, he was grabbed by the collar of his shirt, it was Garp. Under Doflamingo's horrified gaze, Garp's Hockey bottled his whole body. Bottom. Falling. Garp roared. With a bang, Garp grabbed Doflamingo and smashed it to the ground. Hockey bombarded the ground directly into a huge deep pit, and Doflamingo was falling towards the pit right now. It seemed as if all the bones in his body were broken, and the blood from his mouth couldn't be held back. Even though both Garp and Sengoku were suspected of making a sneak attack, at this moment, Doflamingo still understood what it means to be the strongest sailor. Garp and Sengoku punched a kid, and instantly F***ked Doflamingo and Crocodile into the pit. At the same time, as if it was a signal, everything in Logue Town was in chaos. Gecko Moria, who was planning to leave, couldn't help but want to get together when the situation is so lively. Also at this moment, Sakazuki was agitated with magma all over his body, ready to burn a tunnel out of the ground, go in and fish out that bastard Doflamingo and beat him up. But just as lava condensed out of his arms, a shadow suddenly stretched out on the ground. Before Sakazuki could react, there was a pop, and the shadow protruded obliquely from the ground, instantly cutting Sakazuki into two pieces. He, Marine's monster, let me feel it. Moria said with an evil smile. Moria has decided to go to sea to become a pirate, why not weigh in advance how powerful the so-called headquarters Marine is? Sakazuki's upper body fell to the ground, with a very angry expression on his face. Why the hell dare to come out and provoke our Marine? On the other side, Pelusolino's figure had already appeared in the air, his eyes looked downward, as if he had found Doflamingo's figure from the deep pit. I see. Pelusolino whispered softly. Then he crossed his hands in front of him, forming a cross shape, and the dazzling golden light quickly began to condense, as if he wanted to give Doflamingo a stab. But before Paluzolino could use this ability, suddenly his ears trembled slightly, and in a trance, he seemed to hear the crackling sound of thunder and lightning. Almost at the same moment when he heard the voice, an electric arc suddenly flashed in Paluzolino's peripheral vision, and then, a handsome figure appeared beside him. This figure was dropping the kick with an upside-down golden hook posture. If there is no mistake in the calculation, the kick should have landed on his face. Sound a lightning kick. Beckman roared. With a slamming kick, it landed directly on Paluzolino's head. Fortunately, Paluzolino's reaction speed was fast enough, and he gave up the last attack on Doflamingo in the first place and moved his arms upwards, just crossed to block Beckman's kick. But the kick was still powerful, and it was not easy to use it in the air. After being hit, Paluzolino turned into a golden light, and quickly smashed into a certain building on the ground, directly smashing it into pieces. Ruins. At the same time that Paluzolino's unexpected kick flew, Beckman adjusted his posture in the air, clasped his hands in front of him, and the light flashed. Thunder. Beckman growled. A large amount of lightning condensed in his palm, ready to burst out. But at this moment, a gust of cold air suddenly hit, and from the corner of the eye, it was Lian Zan. Kuzan's arms were filled with icy air and white smoke, as if he wanted to come over and hug Beckman, and freeze him into ice cubes. But before Kuzan got close to Beckman, a dark green slash suddenly exploded under the ground. A flash of the black knife. Mahawk's cold voice reached everyone's ears. Then, Kuzan was instantly cut in two with a knife, and fell from the air towards the ground. Ah la la. Kuzan muttered as he fell. Looks like today's Logtown is really Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. How can someone jump out at random, with such strong strength, and challenge their marines? It was also at this time that Beckman was not disturbed by Kuzan, and the lightning in his hand condensed into a pillar, blasting out from top to bottom, hitting the fallen ruins of Paluzolino. The lightning speed was so fast that it was almost impossible to see the trajectory clearly. But even so, a golden light prism flew out precisely from the ruins, intercepting the thunder liquid in midair. In an instant, the rich light element and the violent thunder element collided together, followed by a big explosion. It erupted from the air and enveloped the entire square. On the bell tower, the aftermath of manic energy swept past. Drago raised his hand and tugged on the brim of his windbreaker, and couldn't help but sigh with emotion. That guy Doflamingo. Dot has found a reliable companion. As soon as Beckman made a shot, Drago recognized it. Isn't this the legendary thunder fruit? The so-called invincible one. Facts have proved that the ability of this fruit is really strong, and Drago can tell at a glance that Beckman's basic skills are not as solid as Paluzolino, who has been trained in marine all year round. But after this guy took the initiative, he was able to deal with Paluzolino with his ability alone, without losing the wind. It can be seen how much improvement this thunder fruit has brought. At the same time, Drago is also very emotional that the new great era has indeed come, but it is more turbulent than he expected. Take a look at this Logtown. It is a microcosm of the world. The eternal war between pirates and marines broke out again. Karma. The tall Eau Rouge slammed a punch, knocking out a marine's rear admiral on the spot. At this time, Eau Rouge was at least 5 meters tall, with a maniacal smile on his face, as if he was about to throw a haze here. But at the next moment, a gap exploded in the ground, a stream of blood spurted out, and then Doflamingo's figure quickly appeared in front of Eau Rouge. Doflamingo is fine. Garp's sudden blow is strong, but trying to kill him instantly. That is obviously impossible. Looking at the chaotic situation in Logtown, the blood under Doflamingo's feet burst out suddenly, turned into a spear, and instantly pierced a marine vice admiral who wanted to sneak attack him. But obviously, Doflamingo didn't mean to pay attention to these miscellaneous fish. He roughly glanced at the situation on the battlefield. Now it seems that it is very chaotic. It seems that the pirates are very rampant. But Doflamingo judged the direction of the situation in just one breath, and it was obvious that they had no chance of winning. Not to mention that Sakazuki, Paluzolino, and Kuzan are not easy to get along with. Then the three of Suru, Garp, and Sengoku may work together to suppress all dissatisfaction in this Logtown. There is only one reason why Marine has not gained the upper hand, and that is that there are still a large number of civilians around here who have not been able to be evacuated. So much so that Marine is tied up and can't let go. Once you wait for the Marine soldiers to evacuate these civilians, you can wait, like Gecko Moria, who is very arrogant now. I am afraid that he will be beaten out of shit. Of course, if he didn't type it out, then he did it cleanly. Senor. Doflamingo's lips moved slightly, and a sound wave spread out from his mouth. This is not a whisper, but an application of one's own abilities. Sure enough, after a while, the sound waves seemed to have received some feedback, and Doflamingo quickly locked the position of the feedback, and asked again. Senor, how is the ship getting ready? Young master, the anchor has been weighed and ready to be dispatched at any time. Senor stood on the deck and responded softly. He doesn't have any special abilities, but Doflamingo can be quickly affected by his sound waves. The two of them seem to be communicating on the radio. Okay. Don't wait for us, let the ship out first. First guess Marine will block the port soon. Doflamingo ordered immediately. Yes. Senor responded quickly. In fact, this is indeed the case. The warships in the port have already begun to move around. It is estimated that the port will be blocked in a short time. At that time, in the face of Marine's firepower, even a single ship will not be able to escape. Grabbing Eau Rouge, who was already totally crazy, Doflamingo said, receive the ability, keep a low profile, let's run away. Run away. Your rogue from Sky Island obviously didn't understand the situation clearly. I always feel that there is no need for this. Don't talk nonsense. If you don't run, your journey will be over. Doflamingo gave the fool a blank look, and then said, you run to the pier first, and we will arrive later. At the same time as the voice fell, Doflamingo's figure was filled with blood and disappeared with a bang. On the other side, Mihawk is fighting fiercely with Kuzan, but it can be seen that Kuzan, who is about 6 or 7 years older than Mihawk, at least in terms of strength at this time, is much stronger than the slightly immature Mihawk. Already faintly began to have the feeling of suppressing Mihawk. Ah la la, this little brother, I don't think you are a pirate, right? If I stop now, I can still treat it as. Kuzan persuaded Mihawk while forcing Mihawk back with air conditioning. But before he finished speaking, Doflamingo suddenly emerged from the shadows beneath his feet. This moment came so abruptly that Kuzan was a little dazed for a moment. Before he could react, he saw Doflamingo holding down the back of Kuzan's head, and smashing him directly to the ground with a sudden blow. Sorry. This guy is my friend, can you please let him go? Of course, this is just Doflamingo's self-talk. After he succeeded in a sneak attack, without a word, he stepped forward and grabbed Mihawk, who was still a little unresponsive. Taking advantage of his height and physique, he carried Mihawk directly under his arm and took it away. Put me down, bastard, Mick cursed and struggled. Am I shameless? Don't talk nonsense, we have to run now. Doflamingo quickly responded. 2 wings sprouted from his back, and he flapped them suddenly, leading Mihawk to fly towards the port at an extremely fast speed. But in the next moment, Garp's figure suddenly blocked in front of Doflamingo, and the fist in his hand was full of strong haki, saying, where are you going? Donquixote family brat. You don't mean to make me kill here, Garp, Doflamingo said with a fierce look in his eyes. At the same time as the voice fell, his wings flapped violently, making a smooth turn from the air, and attacked the crowd on the ground. However, he didn't do anything, but relied on observation haki and ultrasonic positioning to quickly shuttle through the crowd. Garp in the air watched this scene with a hesitant expression for a moment. After all, he didn't dare to chase that bastard Doflamingo again. As Doflamingo said, if he kills here, he's in trouble. This is not Cervantes, there are no good people here. There are tens of thousands of ordinary people in Logue Town here.